Let's next hear the report of our administrative coordinator, Chuck Whiting.
I'd like to start by thanking Supervisor Mells. He is always available in somebody's time of need, and I've noticed that there's been a few other people that have shared the tissues this morning. It's always nice to be totally humbled by something. A couple things I'd like to report on. I'm going to try to make this work if I can. Around this time of year, we, as many of you know, have our health insurance renew. And we mainly do this for the employee health insurance, but some of you may be aware that our retirees, former county employees, have the option, once they've retired, to continue to take county insurance. It's at their cost because many of them are Medicare eligible. We have a variety of rates for them. The reason why I want to show you this is it's not something that shows up as a county budget item, but it is something to be aware of just what it does cost the retirees to continue to stay in the county's plan. Now, last year we made some changes in the grouping of Medicare eligible retirees because we are now required by government accounting standards to account for any county funds that may somehow subsidize retirees' rates. The other big change last year, as some of you may know, was Medicare D came out, which offers plans for pharmaceutical coverages for Medicare eligible people. And we wanted to change the plan a little bit to allow retirees to opt out of that portion of our coverage and go directly to Medicare D. So there is a medical coverage only component. This gets complicated. I'm not going to go through it in a lot of details. I think the main purpose for showing you this is just the reality of the kinds of costs that retirees face. We've gotten a lot of calls. Maybe you have gotten a few calls. We do what we can to assist. Some of them are not aware of what they can do with Medicare D or who they can go to. The benefit specialist coordinator in the Department of Aging spends a lot of time talking to seniors all over the county, but also our own retirees on their plan. So you're just seeing some of the difference here in rates. These are current employees on average on the first line. Some of our other ones. The main one I want to show you is the this one here, particularly the first line, and you see just how painful this can be for some retirees. If you're just a single person on Medicare on the county's plan, meaning what our plan covers, and including the pharmaceutical use, you're seeing a over $300 a month increase in what you have to pay to stay on the county's plan. There's a catch-22 in this. Those who can find cheaper coverage in another plan, and there's plenty of other plans out there, often will choose to leave and go get that plan, but sometimes that leaves the people who are harder to insure in our group, which then recycles next year as the experience of the group is factored into the renewals, and we'll keep seeing a lot of increases in their coverage. Now, this is supplemental insurance. Medicare comes first. Ours comes second, but that second column, and depending on your personal situation, whether you're trying to cover you and your spouse, or your spouse is under 65 or not Medicare eligible, you can see what kind of rates these folks are facing and what kind of increases they faced for this renewal year. The bottom two are the plans that are now offered for the retirees who are Medicare eligible and opt out of the pharmaceutical coverage, which is more reasonable, and their plans, if they are going to Medicare D, vary on what their personal needs are, what plan they get into. I don't have anything to tell you for you to do about this, just to be aware. When employees get to the age where they're considering retirement, we find that probably the number one issue for them is what their ability to get health insurance is. And you'll see later in the budget presentation that we have some internal costs that we have to take into account every year on the employee health insurance. But for the plan that we have right now, this is the kind of impact that a lot of these seniors are facing. So sometimes we send that letter out to you just so you know we weren't able to do that this time. We only got this out, I think, last week. And I figured this would be a good opportunity just to go over that. Now, a couple other things to note. Most of the last several weeks, obviously, has been involved in the budget, so I'm going to wait for that presentation to be made. But a couple issues coming up to keep in mind. The Finance Committee has been working on both the planning process for the property here in Hudson, the county-owned property. And as most of you know or should know, in the past we've had a party interested in the 16-acre parcel of county farm property that was cut off from the rest of the farm by the highway project up there. The city of New Richmond has had a rezoning petition and is having a public hearing on that on November 9th. Finance Committee meets earlier that day to see if they want to take any kind of a position on it. It's to rezone it to commercial, which is consistent with what the committee has felt was in the best interest of the county, both on the Hudson property and what prospectively would develop on the New Richmond property. We will likely have something to report on both properties to the board at the December meeting, but certainly feel free to weigh in with those committee members on any concerns you might have. I guess that's all I have. Tuesday is election day, so remember to vote. Thank you. Ron.
Chuck, on that sale of the New Richmond property, does finance, have we given them the authority to execute that sale, or do they have to come back here?
No, we and the Finance Committee hasn't decided to sell it. The discussion at either the October meeting or the September meeting was to replicate the kind of planning process that we've gone through on the Hudson property.
But they've got to come back here to,
Right, absolutely.
to sell it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
I understand that medical costs go up all across the country. A lot of it is because we continue to demand more from our medical coverage. Is there in our medical plans that we offer, is there a custom-made packets where people can say, I only want this or I only want that? other than just a medical plan or Medicare or some combination?
Well, there actually isn't. And one might suggest that there should be. We've certainly had discussions with the employee groups, union groups, even the non-reps about it. Changing the plan may be the harder way to go about it. We can find some other plans, but certainly with our contract situation, we would need to negotiate the availability of that. There's, as pointed out with this group of retirees, the main incentive people would have to go outside of our plan would be that it'll save them some money. It'd probably also save the county some money. But as you have people leave your group, you end up having people who aren't as capable of leaving the group, and it's called adverse selection, and you end up having higher costs for the members that you have. So it becomes problematic, and I think a reality in trying to negotiate changes is that you usually don't get concessions on these things without some sort of trade-off on the other side. I think it is something that we're going to have to spend some time on again. We've done it before, but we're going to have to do it again in just looking at that overall cost. And, you know, this is tough on people who just pay it out of their pocket, but for the employee side, the county is picking up 90% of that, and it does lead to financial issues that the county has to deal with in kind of a macro sense.
I just bring that up if the union's acting in the best interests of the retirees and currently working people. You know, there should be some leverage there to provide a lower cost medical plan, lower to the taxpayers also. And there should be, I think, some pretty heavy consideration on offering tailor-made or different packages within a medical plan.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Whiting?
Chuck, is there what kind of a copay is there on the prescriptions?
Our plan, I believe, calls for a $10 copay on most everything that we have. I think it's $50 for emergency room visits, something like that.
Because that's a negotiable amount. I know that in our retiree plan, our copay is a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
So our cost is lower.
Yeah, and you know, this is just for what we have. This is the cost, and some of it certainly can be viewed as rich relative to what other plans may be. Retirees have the option of at least trying to find other plans. Employees can do that as well, but they have a right to the county's plan as it stands. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to take these. I may need them later. Thank you.
Good. Let me comment on today's agenda. We have a couple of unusual opportunities. I see that Kim Riemann is here from the 4-H Ag Extension function, and ice cream will be served during the break in room 1218 across from this room. And I believe that the group called Madam, the nonprofit group that has been a strong partner with our meth committee, will have their exhibit set up in room 1259 on the north end of the building sometime about the same time as we would be taking a break. Just when we take a break is going to be a function of how we progress through the agenda. The big deal today, of course, is passing a budget. We're ready for the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to move that? Mr. Ritz? Second by Mr. Mortensen. All in favor of adopting the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That's unanimous. Thank you. The chair will announce the reappointment of Trudy Poppenhagen to the Economic Development Tech Zone Board. She has previously served a partial term since that tech zone board was created. Mr. King and I considered her reappointment and decided that that was appropriate, and we wish her well in that role. Today's budget process will be, I guess, very similar to what we've had in the last several years. First, there'll be a presentation that will be led by the chair of the Finance Committee, Mr. Stan Kruger, with assistance from Mr. Whiting. It's in the form of a PowerPoint, copyrighted term, of course, presentation. You have a handout so you can follow along, and I'm sure that you will be encouraged to make notes on your copy and let Mr. Kruger run through the full presentation. Then after that, we will have the public hearing part of it, in which anybody who is present in the room and not a supervisor will be free to speak and make comments about the budget that was presented. I might just mention at this point that that public comment section is a public hearing, and key word is hearing. It's not a dialogue. People who have a question to ask certainly may ask the question, but should not expect an instant answer to it or an answer at all. The testimony, as it were, is for the guidance of the supervisors as they get into the third part of the budget project, which is dealing with the actual budget and passing some kind of budget as appropriate. Once the budget is formed up in agenda item 1A, B, and C, then it follows practically automatically that item number 2 on our agenda, the County Aid Bridge, and item 3, construction and maintenance, both of which are transportation functions, and number 4, the new position resolution, all follow from the scope of the budget that is presented, dealt with, and ultimately adopted. Then we'll go on to different topics. If we can, we'll try to get to that point before taking a break, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I think that's enough introduction from me. We'll start, I suppose, Mr. Kruger, by moving the budget. Is that what you want to do? Yes. Okay, and we have that in our packets as item number 1C, and that was sent out to you in advance. Is there a second for that motion? Mr. Standifer seconds it. So we now have it, and we're free to talk about it. Come on up and reorganize yourselves as you see fit there for the presentation. And this is what the duplicate of those slides looks like.
In case any of you people cannot read the black and white copy, we do have some colored ones back there. And I would prefer if you keep your comments to the end. If you notice on all the slides, there's a little number on the bottom right-hand corner. So if you have a question on it, just mark it down someplace and just remind yourself of that. I don't know, I guess the Halloween theme is presentable today for that. So there's about 50 pages in here. So let's go to slide 1. The county board goal setting issues were not addressed specifically, but generally we have a physical responsibility. We had communications and cooperation amongst our supervisors, our staff, and the public. And the finance was to deal with financial issues, not operation issues. And we left those to the respective committees. Physical issues that came apparent during early was the highway funding needs outside the norm of the past several years of the levy. The other one was the nursing home changes. It was seen as high board priority, And what impact do the changes have on the budget? And the levy limits put a strain on our budget. And finance was reluctant to go to unreserved fund balances with eyes looking towards the 2008 budget, which is even going to be tougher. And you can see that we had a 5.25% increase in new construction as compared to the other counties. Next slide. We are still one of the fastest growing counties in the state in both population and equalized value growth, but we are seeing signs of a slower economic growth. And we will have the first debt payment, service payment, allowable outside the levy limit in 2007. And the end result of this 2000 budget will be that our mill rate will be just a shade under $3 for the first time in memory. Okay, next slide. Okay, this slide here is just showing the valuation increase. Now that's almost $700 million in new construction and equalized valuation. And the new construction is the red up there, and the economic change is the blue, and the other one is other changes. So that you can see the growth. Now this is just, remember, this is just total dollar value of economic growth and from new construction and the economy. It's not the total value of the property valuation in the county. Next slide. Okay, this slide here, this pie chart shows a shift away from new construction value, and finance does have a concern with the slowing construction figures and with the lag in valuation figures. And the 2006 new construction, we figure, will be less than what is here for this year. Okay, this is the distribution of the asset assessed valuation changes in the county over the last 6 years, 5 years, 6 years. You can see the economic change has always been 50% or greater, and you can see the economic growth was a high in 2004, and we see a steadily decline on that going into 5 and 6, and we're going to see even more of that in 2007. Okay, this is the distribution of the total property valuation, and that's $8 billion. Just remember, it's $8 billion. And you can see that the residential value, and we're looking at this slide, the residential value was 77% in 02 and 03, 79 in 04, and 80% in 05, and it's 80% again in 06. So you can see that residential taxpayers are paying the burden of our taxes, of our real estate taxes in the county. You can see how our growth is really constant, and it's still increasing at a good rate. Look, we had 11% last year, and this is without the TIF districts. But this time, I think we should start looking towards where's our growth going to be in 20 and 30 years from now. Okay, this is the budgeted property tax levy for the last 15 years. If you notice that in about 2001, we were just a shade under 15 million. If you go back one more year to 2000, we were right about 11 million. It's almost doubled today of what we did. So we increased our levy, we doubled it in the last 5 years, 6 years. Next slide. Okay, this is the county historical mill rate. And if you notice that back in the early 70s, we were right at $4. We had a high back in 1986. We went up, and then we were way up almost to $6. It's steadily been coming down. It went down for a while in the early 2000s, and now it's for the first time we're under $3 per $1,000 of value. Okay. Here was our concerns about
our levy. The levy limit set a cap increase of a new levy of $1,171,445. We also have a debt levy outside of this for $151,000. In 2005, as a finance committee, we used fund balances to pay the first year of the Scripps Church borrowing. This was not the case in 2006, and it will not be the case in 2007. When we started this budget, the finance committee had a budget deficit of almost $2.5 million. Now, our concerns for the 2008 budget will be that we are sure that there's going to be some sort of a levy limit again, regardless of what happens next Tuesday. Whoever gets in, there's going to be some sort of a levy limit, and it's going to be harder to fund this in 2008. I mean, if we look at this budget, we compare the 2007 budget, 2006 budget. We knew when we were doing the 2006 budget, we knew that 2007 was going to be difficult, more difficult, and it was. So this is where we're at. Our budget concerns and our realities, if we're looking at this, we show the continuing needs of a growing county. We had new and modified positions of almost $700,000. The highway levy request was over $700,000. Health and Human Services operation was increased almost $800,000. Public safety was up $400,000. But we did have some positive signs too. We had net operations from the nursing home decrease. Our investment income was up almost $400,000. Our sales tax revenue is up almost $400,000. We did have an increase though in Health and Human Services levy increase. And our liability insurance is up, but it is slowing. Next slide. Okay. No, you're too far. We're on 13. You're on 13. Sorry. Okay, yeah, okay. The nursing home budget is the same as the budget that was not approved by Health and Human Services. And the Finance Committee figured it was best to wait and see the results of the discussion regarding alternatives and the RFP process for the nursing home. But we approved the nursing home budget as it was presented, and that the Health and Human Service Board did not approve. The drug court coordinator was the only new position that was approved. We viewed it as a cost saver, that it was necessary because of the action taken upon by the Meth Advisory Committee, the Sheriff's Department, the Health and Human Services, and the courts. And this was the only position approved by the Finance Committee. We did struggle, the Finance Committee struggled very heavily with that highway levy increase. And we know that this is going to be our #1 priority going into 2008 budget, that the highway department's budget is going to have to be something we have to look at. And last year we tried to continue our objectives of meeting the liability fund balance of $600,000. We have a single year aggregate deductible of $1.5 million. So, you know, we're still concerned about that, but we're getting closer to where we want to be with that budget, and we think we'll get that. We asked for it from the Sheriff's Department and obtained $270,000 in reductions, and we'll go through that later. We also moved $287,000 out of capital outlay into a borrowing pool. We took the previous financial personnel department and wrote it to the administrative coordinators and finance department budgets. And then the new debt service of $151,000 is payable in 2007 is outside the state imposed levy. As we talk about the former Human Resources Department, there is an overall increase of when we took that and we put that into the administrative coordinator's department and the finance department, and there's about a $32,000 increase in there. And the reason for that is for contracted, we have 4 union contracts coming up this coming year, and we have additional insurance costs for 1 staff person. Okay.
Did you want to look at that slide?
Yeah, next slide, please. Okay. This is the highway department's percent of total levy funding, including the county and aid bridges. As you can see, historically, they were at 29% in the early 90s, and they were dropping down. And if you look at 2006 compared to 2007, their request is about the same, a little bit higher, and that's when they had the problem with their cost of materials that's going up 38% that Highway Commissioner Ramberg was telling us about in his presentation in September, and I think you all should have remembered that. Okay. Again, this slide is showing our bar graph of the levy increase requested by the Highway Department. And you can see how they were always about equal. 5% was a high year, a little over 5%, maybe 7.5% in 2002. And we limited it to a 5% levy increase. And you can see how much more their request was. It was 22%. And this is showing that their cost of maintaining our roads is very important. And this is what their request was. I mean, it's not, they weren't going to go out and buy a whole bunch of new equipment. They were just going to take care of our roads. Okay, here are some specific reductions that was determined by the Finance Committee for the auditor department, starting with here with the general government. Okay, and the first thing we did is we moved the city Hudson water tower. There was an agreement made years back that we would pay half of the water tower in 1 year, and then we'd pay the other half later on. Now we are paying this off into a capital funds project. We also took out of there the government center room 1259 remodeling and equipment, $10,000 for the disabled American veterans, which is in Menominee, and they wanted a kitchen request, and we couldn't afford to give them that. We have eliminated all out-of-state travel. We took out of our county boardroom our AV equipment because we felt we couldn't afford it. Circuit court, we took out the rooms, court and hearing room chairs. We took out the drug court furniture, and we took out the family court commissioner's additional hours. Clerk of court, we took out 1 position, and we requested additional cuts made. As a finance committee, when we looked at these additional cuts, if they were over this 5% levy increase, we cut it. So, I mean, I think we were very fair to all departments. We weren't picking and choosing. It was very difficult to pick and choose because we had a gun pointed at our heads, and it was coming from Madison with this levy limit. Corp counsel, we took out his assistant corp counsel position. Finance, we took out another position there. We took out budget software, and we took out 2 computers. The county treasurer, we took out the optical imaging deal. She is ready to put that in, and she is prepared to, and we put that into the IT budget, that $20,000. Okay, now this is Health and Human Services, and if we look at the building maintenance up there, we are eliminating 1 position at the nursing home. And other maintenance items we are putting off, like painting of the interior painting of the government center here, Graham Drive improvements to the road. The district attorney's office, we eliminated a contracted paralegal. We eliminated the 3/10 of a juvenile prosecutor. And so therefore we had $377,000 of general government department reductions. Public safety expenditures. Again, we eliminated the law enforcement clerks. We eliminated their equipment. And then we also asked the sheriff for $278,000 in additional cuts. We gave him a day to get this done. He came back in a very professional manner, and he made the cuts, and he told us how he was gonna make the cuts. And on behalf of myself, and I think the other finance committee members, we really appreciated what the sheriff did for this finance committee on this budget cut. We thank him. And emergency communications, again, we had to eliminate these 2 additional telecommunicators, and we also asked them for, again, they were 5% over their levy limit, so we took another $25,000 out of their account because we needed this cut. We can't afford it if we don't have the money. Okay, here is the total of the personnel positions and changes not approved by the finance committee. You can see the clerk of court, the family court commissioner hours, the second assistant to the corp counsel, the part-time administrative assistant in finance, the telecommunicators, the paralegal. We cut them all. The only thing we did not cut was the drug enforcement coordinator. So there was $641,000. Okay. This was a highway proposed budget. You can see it was $23,193,000. We had to cut 5% off of there, which is the $540,000. The county aids, bridges, that does not change. We go down to the education and recreation expense, the county parks. We cut that $101,000, was mostly all capital outlay items that we cut off of there. Here are the items that we moved to the borrowing pool, which is the mass storage device, the voice over internet provider is that VoIP. Then we had wireless capabilities at New Richmond and Baldwin, which we moved in there. We are going to upgrade our phone system. And that UPS and air handling equipment, that's an uninterrupted power source. And that's air handling equipment for the IT department here in this building. And we need that to keep a constant temperature in there and humidity. And the current phone system at the Health and Human Services Department, you say it's a lot of money. It would be compatible to our system here. The system up there is 16 years old. You can't find parts for it. There's no place you can find parts for it, so it's time to go. And then we had, we're gonna replace the parking lot. So that totals of our capital improvements, $286,000. Next slide, please. Okay. This is the Health and Human Services expense changes. We eliminate the medical records technician, the economic support specialist, the public health position. We eliminated $53,000 of capital outlay items, and we eliminated the St. Croix County Industries carpeting. On the bottom there where it says reduction, that should say that's an increase. I caught that error early this morning, and we didn't get a chance to change that. So that would be an increase of $28,000 over their budget as of from 9/27 to 10/18. Again, this is some more items we cut. Planning and zoning, we cut the real property listers hours. We cut the removal, the remodeling project we removed, and the economic development, they wanted more money, and we said 5%. So this is the difference between their 5% increase and what they wanted. That's the reduction, $12,000. Land and Water Department, we reduced, took out their truck, and we had additional reductions in their department. So if we're looking at total expenditures out of that $2.5 million that we talked about earlier that was over and above, we took out $1,600,000 approximately as we came up with our budget. So we were down to $88,487,000. So the other difference, the $880,000 is coming from revenue side. Okay. The Department of Revenue contacted the county in mid-October, and they made a mistake. They recalculated our maximum allowable levy and our computer aid. So they gave us another $64,115 more over and above. And you can see our computer aid also down there. Okay, the debt issuance here, the $286,000, is showing as money coming in, and will we use it to pay our expenses? So it's an in and an out. It's just, we wanted to show it that it's coming in and it's going out at the same time. Okay, this was our total revenues before we applied some of our surpluses. We applied $409,000. We took some out of our sales tax fund balance of $377,000, and we put in the capital projects fund balance. Is the water tower. So that's our $880,000. Okay, and then our borrowing proceeds. Okay, now this is showing our fund balances for all funds in the county. The general fund, which is the big blue long line, you can see that we got almost $7 million. But the finance department, with approval from our auditors, that we try to keep a 25% balance of the general fund as an appropriate general fund balance to maintain this account throughout the whole year, and that affects our bond rating also. So we have been doing that. If you look at it, and if you remember, we were talking about our budget earlier. Even though our levy went from about 11 million when we had about a $55 million operating, we had about $11 million in that account overall. Today, we went up a little bit, but our budget has gone up a whole lot more. Okay. This is it's the same fund balance information, only it's presented differently. As you can see that the light blue, the aqua color on top, is the 25% of the general fund expenditures. The nursing home is in the yellow. The highway department is in that dark blue that's between the 1 million and the 5 million on the 1999 budget, and you can see how that amount, and granted, they do a very good job over there. They take their money and they bank it, and then they use it for their capital improvements when they have to buy a gravel pit or put up a new maintenance building. So you can see that it's gone down a little bit each year from 2002 to 2003, then to 2004, and it appears it came back a little bit in 2005. Okay, the employee health insurance, again, we had a switch from Mutual of Omaha. We made it from ING to Mutual of Omaha starting November 1st. So that's tomorrow. The variables affecting our health insurance is our reinsurance plan that we have to keep 125% of what of anticipated claims for the next year. Another thing that affects ours is every time we have an employee that takes health insurance, it affects our budget. It affects our budget. And we use the fund balance to apply it forward. We are looking, the Finance Committee, with this 21% increase, the Finance Committee will be looking into health insurance options to try to control our cost in the future. That's one of our projects for the coming year. This shows that where the represented employees, which is the union, versus the non-represented employees, and you can see that the non-represented employees had a 35% increase. Medicare eligible and retirees are placed in their own group based on where they were at when they retired. In other words, if they were a union employee when they retired, they were put in the union group, but if they were a union and then when they moved into a rep position, then they became a non-rep retiree.
They're in their own groups, Dan.
They're in their own group, I'm sorry. Okay. This is showing our train wreck that we had back with the strip search settlement. And the bonds may be paid off early in 2009. Remember, we put this into the levy for this year. And this does not include WMIC's payment. This is just our share of it, of that, what's it, $7 million? Total. It was about a $7 million strip search. Okay. Our library fundings, we have to go under Act 150. And you can see that our commitment was up $30,000. This is a state statute, state law that we have to follow it, that we have to pay for at least up to 70% of rural circulations. One thing you can see that there's more people using the St. Croix County libraries that are from other counties than what our county residents are using of other county libraries. So there's from $61,000 compared to $16,000. So our county libraries are making $45,000 off of these other, and we will collect that from the other counties. Okay, this shows our sales tax. We know that our sales tax revenue lagged in 2005, but has improved for 2006. The finance is concerned about, we're seeing a slowing of our sales tax amounts. We also know that the Department of Revenue did make some errors, and they had a hard time balancing their books. We don't know, we have some questions in our own minds of what's happening there. But we feel that our sales tax budget for the coming year is a conservatively figured number. Levy limits in some form will reappear in 2007. In what form, we do not know. They might close this where we can use part of our levy limits towards the debt load. And we also know that there's a housing slowdown, and that is going to have an effect on our 2008 budget. We have escalating costs and declining revenue in the nursing home, and other programs will not make things easier. Last year, the Finance Committee felt that our budget adjustments curbed our spending to agree that in 2007 would require deeper consideration of the county operations, and that remains our concern, and we know that 2008 is going to be worse. And material costs for the highway department needs are up. One-time trend, is it a one-time or is it a trend? I think it's going to be, it's more than a trend because it's all related to the oil. And based on my own personal items that I have to do when dealing with any petroleum-related product, oil product, plastic or TPR or anything like that, it's up. There's nothing we can do about it. New revenue sources of the Finance Committee was such as one-time land sales. We need to have a plan for and not to be used to plug our gap in our budgets in operations. And we know the 2008 budget will be worse. Okay. You can see that we have 4 union contracts expiring in 2007. We still have one in 2006 that's not settled. Our health insurance for our employees and retirees are getting more and more. It's just, our total operations are just, ongoing expenses are just increasing. And we have a hard time filling part-time and temporary positions, and if that's going to increase, we're going to have to cut someplace. And our vacant positions are not going to be automatically replaced or filled. And our capital items are, we have a choice between our projects, our personnel, or our operations, and we know that our roads have to be kept up. Okay, this shows our percentage of distribution of the budget, and these were made directly from the summary sheets provided to the supervisors. Okay, this trend shows how our revenue sources over the past 7 years, and you can see that our service charges have increased That's the larger, the top red, dark red color. And you can see where our tax levy, which is the bottom item, how that's gone from just a little over 10 million in 1998 up to, that should be 21 million in 2007. But that's, you can just see how there's such a more of a increase on our budget of that. And we're getting less and less state aids. Okay, the overall levy exceeded the county levy limits because of the additional debt levy that we could include, that is not included in the levy limit. The highway, the county aids bridge project is based on projected projects that is, and requests that are from the townships. And this health insurance, it's on the bottom there, the $89,000, 52% increase. This is what's applied to the long-term sick balance of the employees. It is not the normal employee's health insurance. It is an estimate of who is going to retire in the future year. And that's what they use to apply towards their health insurance. Okay, general government includes that new drug coordinator. Public safety is down because it's due less in capital outlay, especially in emergency communications. Remember, we put in all those new consoles last year. Highway and bridges, you can see that that's down. Next slide. Okay, you can see that our health and human services accounts for about 42% of the total. But this is slightly less than what it was last year, the percentage of the total. And so if you take our health and human services and our highway and county aid projects there, almost $2,000 of our total expenditure pie graph goes for those two departments. Okay, this is showing our growth of our expense areas over the last 9 years. And over time, our biggest grower of this is the human services portion of the budget. And you can see that's at, I want to call it shocking pink color up there. So you can see where that's about a $23 million increase in 1998 to, I would say, close to 30 million plus in 2007. Okay. This difference shows where we had the increases. The circuit court is where we have the drug coordinator position, that's the $91,000. The information technology department, we have capital outlay in there for that. The administrative coordinator and the finance committee, you can see they both have an increase, but remember, we moved into that department from the human resource department. That increase, there's about a $32,000 difference in that between if you take the administrative coordinator and the finance director, so you got about $317,000 there compared to $285,000 that we took out of the health and human services. But we also have that one employee taking health insurance, which is making our difference. Okay, the decrease in emergency management reflects some cost savings and lower grant amounts. And emergency communications is down due to no capital improvement items as we had in 2006. If we look at this and we say, well, how come we have some things in health and human services? Child support and veteran service office and aging all get lumped into this general category because that's how the auditors break it out on the audited report that we have every year. With the changes made in health and human services and the nursing home, this group growth has slowed considerably on the expense side. Okay. The big growth there, you see the county planning office. That is in regards to grants that the planning and zoning department is looking at due to the St. Croix River mitigation grant for improvements relating to the prospective Stillwater Bridge project. And the county will be acting for fiscal agent for that, for various construction components. There will be no county money dedicated to this project, only some administration time. Land and water is down due to a grant and a staff position reduction. And the land and information is down because of budgeted for professional services. And these expenses, most of those expenses that the land information were grant were based on fees. In summary, our mill rate is down to under $3. Our levy is up almost 6%. You can see that it's $1,322,000. Our debt services, we put that on the levy this year. We are asking for approval of $286,000 in capital projects. We've added one new position and one new position only, the drug court coordinator. The finance committee still has concerns over the highway funding remain. And nursing home decisions will impact future budget operations. And the overall budget is at $88,500,000, roughly speaking, which is up $2.5 million or almost 3% from 2006. That's it. Yep.
We have the lights turned on. Now we're at the stage for public hearing. We'll have 3 minutes per speaker. We'll do it over here, so those folks who would like to make comments pertinent to this budget proposal, do so right here. I might just observe that we have a separate item regarding the nursing home, item number 10 on the agenda. So those folks who might be here and wish to address that particular point should note that this budget that was just proposed has enough money to fund the nursing home at essentially its current level. So that your hands are free to handle your notes and or your gestures. And I have a timer here, and it's actually 2.25 minutes, and then I'll supplement it. Okay, to make up to 3. All right, would anybody like to give some testimony at this time relative to this budget? Just step right up here and stand in line or whatever. All right, madam. What is your name?
I'll never tell you. I want to hold this, please.
No, I want to hold it.
All right.
But I'll keep it close to your mouth.
All right. I'm Linda Donaldson. I'm the library director here in Hudson, Wisconsin. I would just like to read a letter that I sent to the Finance Committee after their July meeting. And at this meeting, we requested that funding for library services to county residents be increased. And the St. Croix librarians agree. Following the meeting, the reason we created this follow-up letter was it was agreement by all of the St. Croix County librarians. Anyway, thank you for hearing our presentation at the Monday, July 17th, 2006 meeting. We appreciate your consideration of the smaller libraries in the county and your continuing support for them through use of the old funding formula. The funding is crucial for the smaller libraries. As we said, we believe a library is a drawing card when prospective residents and new businesses look at the county as a place to live and work. A good public library says a lot about what a community thinks of itself, the importance it places on literacy, education, culture, and its concerns in the future. We also stated that because of the rapid growth in our county, our ability to provide the current services that people take for granted is threatened at the present level of funding. New services that are expected, especially from individuals coming from larger metropolitan areas, such as access to databases, downloads, and other types of access, will be difficult, if not impossible, to provide. We urge you to sincerely consider increasing the funding level above 70% so that libraries continue to meet the needs of county residents at their level of expectation. Please consider increasing the library funding level by 1% per year. This can be a starting point in helping libraries fulfill the needs of county residents. And once again, thank you for all your time and consideration at the Monday, July 17 Finance Committee meeting. That was the message that the St. Croix librarians took to that meeting. I thank you for your consideration today, and if there's any questions, I will take those at this time.
We're not actually going to have a dialogue. Mrs. Donaldson, have you finished your presentation?
But I would like you to know, you see that Halloween jack-o'-lantern up there was always sticking out his tongue ever so many times. Well, when I arrived to the library today, our internet system and our 3M system is down, so I'm going to have to go back to do some IT work. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak here today.
Very good. Is there anyone else who would like to give some input to the process? Mrs. Olson.
Hi there. I'm Chair Steve Duncan, and I'm the Director for the Department on Aging. And I appreciate this opportunity to come before you again with the support and backing of the Council on Aging. I submitted to you in your packet of information that you received at the time of your budget material came to you, a request that we are making for the county board to consider the benefit specialist position to be an employed position by the county. I appreciated the statements that were made repeatedly during the budget presentation and by Chuck regarding the concerns that are faced by retirees and seniors in St. Croix County, and that it is the benefit specialist who is the individual in the county that employees do come to get assistance. The position of drug court coordinator was approved as a new position with the rationale that it saves money. The benefit specialist position, and that was included in your information with information from Governor Doyle, for every $1 spent on that position, $6 is saved in the pockets of older adults, ultimately saving the money to the county. Another concern that I have ultimately too, and this was information that I Googled after meeting with the finance department, was to look at what is the difference between an employee and a contracted position. And I have concerns that I think need to be addressed by the county board as outlined by the Internal Revenue Service and the Fair Labor Standards Act regarding continuing to contract a position that's been in place for 15 years and will continue to be and needs to be available to older adults in St. Croix County. Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak to the budget? Would anyone else like to make a comment during the hearing section here on the budget? Yes, sir.
I'm Richard King. I'm a member of the Disabled Vets. I know you turned down our budget for our $10,000. Maybe I'm out of line coming up here, but I'm speaking for all vets in our St. Croix County. I'm a resident of St. Croix County. We're Dunn, St. Croix, and Pierce County. Dunn County has opened up and got $10,000 waiting for us to see what St. Croix County and Pierce County would do. but I see we lost out, as of to date, out of our 128th Division, we've lost 28 young troops from Iraq. They've committed suicide. It tears me up to even talk about it. We've got a program in progress with the VA of post-traumatic stress to get these people into a program. We got some volunteer psychiatrists going to start working with us, but we still need that restaurant in place so we don't have to come back here and talk to people like yourself and beg for money. And I think the county, St. Croix County, Pierce and Dunn County owes their vets something, and now is the time to step up. I'm a wounded vet. I spent a tour in Korea, 2 tours in Vietnam. I don't appreciate the condition that I'm in. A lot of young vets don't appreciate it. I talked to a young vet that come back from Iraq. He was gut shot. He don't appreciate it. And if you people don't step up and help us, who's going to help us? I'm sure in the long run I've been confronted with a Dunn County Police Department and bringing their police officers through our stress program once we get it off the ground. So I'm sure that you'll get your money back in one form or another 10 times over if you help and support us in getting this project off the ground. So I know that you dumped us, so my time's up, so I won't take any more time, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak? Anyone else? I'll declare the hearing closed then, and the debate can begin on the budget. Mr. King?
My Transportation Committee has asked me to address the county board. We're not asking for the money they took away from us. I just want to explain what they took away from us. We came in on a bottom line budget of $760,000 increase, and they cut our budget by over $500,000. Of our 23 million budget, of that, only $3,765,753 comes out of the county taxpayer. The budget that we brought forward only reflected the increases in material costs. The Highway Department operates in a business environment, and our program responds to the environment. The Transportation Committee brought forth 2 revenue-generating ideas that we would like to add to a base level funding. Wheel tax or a county registration user fee, hotel tax, basically non-resident user fee. Even though these ideas may not be popular, we feel we are forced into at least investigating and researching them. We cannot continue to allow the restrictions put upon us by the state to cut into the services for the people we serve in the core service area like highways. The Transportation Committee and the Highway Department plan to manage through these cuts and to continue with the same principles and trends that have been used so successfully over the years as long as we pursue these additional revenue sources. But we need, as insured base level funding from the county board in the future, to continue and provide these core base level services to the public. We must continue to be in position to respond to highway related cost functions. Our measure is to the public satisfaction. since we are not getting complaints of under or over maintaining or under or overbuilding the county road system, we feel we are doing an adequate job with the resources available to us. Thank you, Buck.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Standifer.
I think as we begin our debate, we need to all fundamentally have the same definition of a word that has been used quite a bit in Stan's presentation and undoubtedly is going to get used some more in our discussion, and that word is cut. As used, I think, primarily in our discussion, we will be talking about cuts that are really reductions in the requests of budgets that came in. This budget that's in front of us today represents no cut in department budgets from previous years. If we were actually cutting budgets and reducing taxes, that would be a cut. The budget that's in front of us right now, in spite of reductions in requests, still represents a net increase of levy dollars of about $1.3 million. And we need to specifically keep in mind the fact that while requests went down, this budget in front of us represents an increase of $1.3 million in property tax dollars that we're proposing to spend.
Mr. Marzoff.
I'd like to begin by thanking Stan Kruger and the Finance Committee for the hard work that they have put in creating a budget under the most difficult of times. There's an old saying about the cycle of life which goes something like this. As infants, we cry out, "Please help me." As sometimes flippant teenagers, we're often found saying, "No thanks, I can help myself." Then, as we enter our young adult lives, we learn the importance of saying, "May I help you?" And finally, in our older years, having come full circle, we once again cry out, "Please help me." In our county directory, under the section titled Council on Aging, it states that the responsibilities of this committee are to receive, disperse, and administer funds for services and programs for older persons, and to assist with organizing, developing, and expanding available services and programs for seniors. An October 17th, 2006 letter sent from the Finance Department to retired St. Croix County employees encourages those retirees, on the one hand, to consult the benefit specialist in the county's Department on Aging office in order to obtain help with any issues they may have with respect to entitlements, for example, Medicare prescription drug coverage, supplemental health insurance, etc. I'd like to insert something that's not in your handout as a case in point. In the administrative coordinator's opening PowerPoint presentation this morning regarding the escalating cost of supplemental health insurance, that points out the very issue I'm trying to present here, the need for the benefit specialist to assist elderly people in dealing with those costs. Also on slide 38 of the Finance Committee's presentation, item 2, related to the cost of health insurance for retirees, and the statement ended with the words, "increasingly complicated retirement issues." Okay, on the one hand, this letter went out from the Office of Finance encouraging retirees to avail themselves of the benefit specialist. Yet, on the other hand, the Department of Aging's recent request to make the benefit specialist position a salaried versus contracted position was denied by the Finance Committee. The Department on Aging subsequently revised its 2007 budget to reflect that the $3,980 the department needs to augment the funding of the benefit specialist position would be used instead to fund the 2.5% incremental salary increases to which its departmental employees are entitled as sanctioned by the Finance Committee and in keeping with the proposed county levy. This action by the Department of Aging was necessitated because of the current moratorium issued by the Finance Committee that no new positions would be created nor funded. But there appears to be a blatant dichotomy here, if not a double standard. In spite of the Finance Committee's moratorium on new positions, the new position of drug coordinator has been created and approved by Finance. Where then is the associative, commutative, and distributive justice in this unfair dichotomy? Please note that just over 75% of the operating funds expended by St. Croix County's Department on Aging is neither requested of nor received from St. Croix County. That 75% instead comes from state and federal monies, from grants written by the department, from its annual silent auction, from its St. Croix County Fair booth, and from fees and/or voluntary contributions paid by recipients of its services. In order that the employees of this department in general, and the benefit specialist in particular, may persevere in their commitment to say yes to those seniors in our county who continue to ask of us, please help me, it is therefore incumbent upon us as a county board to approve the Department of Aging's budget for 2007, but only on the condition that the position of benefit specialist become a fully funded as opposed to contracted position. I therefore put this in the form of a motion. With Kirsty Duncan's permission, I would like to conclude this appeal to you by using her own words, as articulated 1 year ago. The spirit of these words continues to characterize the efforts of her department and those professionals so generously and lovingly who carry out their mission statement. I'm sorry, I misread that. The spirit of these words continues to characterize the efforts of her department as those professionals so generously and lovingly carry out their mission statement. These are Kirsty's words now. My hope is that the Finance Committee will see that we've tried our best to come up with a budget where we are trying to be good stewards with taxpayers' money while also serving a population that has already given so much to our community. Thank you.
Let me clarify the motion with you, Mr. Marzoff. I take it that your motion is to make this an employee position at 35 hours per week, as indicated in the mailing we got from Ms. Duncan. Is that correct?
First of all, Mr. Chairman, I'm not a parliamentarian, and I'm not even sure if to put a motion into this was appropriate, but I followed my mantra that when in doubt, do the friendliest thing, and in order to get it covered, I put it in there. As to the 35 hours, I'm not well enough informed to speak to that issue. If Mrs. Duncan is still here, perhaps she could clarify it.
Mrs. Duncan, would you be able to step up by Chuck there and give us whatever support we need to understand this proposal? I'll look for a second in a second after it's clear what our motion is here. Is it in fact a motion to convert this from a contract position to an employee position at 35 hours per week?
Yes, as outlined and connected to the packet that I sent out to you is a proposal that I sent to the Finance Committee dated September 25th. It outlines what would be the expectation in terms of county appropriation and the other revenue that would go towards that position. And also, as I further outlined in the letter that I sent to you, that would above what was allocated in the 2006 budget from the county appropriation. What we're asking for is $3,980, which is the 2.5 increase that we were given in terms of direction that could be allocated for staff wages and benefits.
The $3,980 is already in the budget, is it not, Mr. Kruger?
It is. When I came back to when initially the Finance Committee said no new positions, that 3,980 was cut. I went back a second time, as I outlined in the letter to the Finance, and they did graciously say that 3,980 could go back towards our other positions, but would be more than happy to have that be allocated towards the benefit specialist position. As we initially made, when we looked at our budget, what we did was we saw that we would compensate the difference in that 2.5% for our other positions through our fundraising appeals and through participant donation requests.
All right. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Mortensen seconds it. Discussion or debate? Now, this will be treated as an amendment to the budget motion, which we have on the floor already. Mr. Rebholz.
Well, some of you in this room know that I spent 4 or 5 years driving the bus, picking up people in the Department of Aging, or for the Department of Aging. And I think if there's any place that we really need to address a review of personnel, this might be one of them. Because when I look at the number of people those years that I worked with, and particularly last year when that Part D Medicare came in, that office was inundated with questions and help that was needed by these older people that didn't know where in the world to go. And if we don't have them, if we don't have someone to answer their questions, they very well may be coming to us, and I don't think they're going to get the answers here.
Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Mr. Stanifer.
I think we should miss the fact that we are currently providing these services. We're providing them with a contracted person, as opposed to this being an individual who is on the county payroll with salary and benefits and other ancillary costs. So I don't think that as we consider whether or not we're going to vote in the affirmative or the negative, that this is a matter of not having these resources available. They currently are available. We're discussing the methodology of providing them.
Ms. Gunderson?
Yes, following up on that, I was wondering what the difference is between a contracted and a salaried position for this. What does that mean to us?
Well, that means the PTO, the fringe package.
But for this position, what does this mean? How is that going to change the position, what they're doing and what they're not doing?
Not be a union position, because no one else in that department is union at this point. Of course, once an employee beyond the probation period, then discharge requires the hearings and other findings of cause. If a person is laid off from a position as an employee, they are entitled to unemployment compensation, where a contracted person, you simply end the contract. Kirsty, I don't see any reason that you can't speak, so do speak.
I know, and Chuck handed me the mic, so. I do want to speak to that fact, and I don't know if Corp Counsel could expand upon this, because it gets into some legalese that that's not my background. But it's my understanding from looking at what is available and what is legally put out there, even as a contract position, she would be eligible if the contract were to end for unemployment, as well as if she's hurt on the job for worker compensation. And there's some concerns, I think, in terms of looking at what a contract employee is versus an employed position. She is, the person who's in the position, is directed by me. I'm her direct supervisor. It's not a position necessarily where she could hang a shingle out and just do her own business. It is a direct service. It is located in the Department of Aging. All of her supplies, et cetera, would be there. Again, I don't know if there's more to be said about that. And there's the irony is that here she's helping people with her benefits, where she herself is paying for the employer and the employee tax on this position. I'm questioning the legality of it.
Mr. Strumke is next.
Thank you. You may want the mic back, but the question I got is a carryover of what you were asking. And that is that we currently have this position filled, the services are being provided, understanding that there's a set amount of money that she's being paid now. And I understand also that she has to pay matching in her own Social Security fund. She has to pay her own unemployment package if she's planning to collect it as a contractor. And so the real question is, what benefit to the citizens of the county will be improved by having her an employee? Not what benefits will be improved for her. This is an issue of what is going to benefit the county by having her become a county employee, other than they have to pay more.
Well, again, I guess what I would back up, we will still serve the older adults of St. Croix County, provide that service. Whether or not is she doing a bad job now because she's contracted? No. Is she going to do, in terms of quality of work, you're not going to be seeing that difference because it's high quality of work right now that's provided. So I'm not able to say that you're going to see that difference. Again, what I challenge back is the obligation that I do think is the county's obligation for this person who in all respects is truly an employee of St. Croix County, except in this formalized way. Technically, I think that there is money that, again, could be due back in terms of the IRS looking that there is money. I mean, to be frank, if money isn't paid into Cheryl Slynn in the treasurer's office to St. Croix County, we'd have concerns about that. I guess that there would be, the federal coffers would be concerned too that right now St. Croix County isn't paying in on this person who's contracted employee.
Well, we better be careful not to raise red herrings of a legal nature here before we've given our counsel and let's not ask him to shoot from the hip, please.
I wouldn't be.
Good. Next, I guess, is Mr. Raymond.
I was going to venture into the legal issue, having consulted with legal counsel here, because I think if there's a legal requirement that we need to do something, that's going to influence how I might look at this. So I'd like to know if we're obligated to make this contract person a full-time employee, or what is the legal ramifications of this, or is it a financial issue of outsourcing versus having our own employee?
And next is Mr. Borup.
That this person has been here a long time and is working side by side, really functioning as a county employee. That's your position. The second one is $3,980. Is that going to cover all the fringes and salary increase? Is that accurate?
It'd be better to look at, that's the increase between what was put on the levy last year, requested by the Department of
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So it's a $13,000 and some dollar difference?
I'm sorry. Again, if you look at the proposal that was sent to the Finance Committee on September 25th, the county appropriation total for 2007 would be $13,980.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
$3,980 above last year, and that was the 2.5% that as a department head, I prioritized saying that this position needs to be recognized.
Final question is, can you find that money in your budget to balance it?
That we would go back and look for the 3,980 to.
In order to leave this budget intact as presented, can you find the money?
It's
in your
already
budget?
there. It's there. Yep. That's the money that when there was no new positions, I went back to the finance and asked if it can't be used towards a new position, as I prioritized it to be, then I would want it to go towards the existing positions as was in the initial instructions given to me by finance when I was preparing my budget. But I'm coming back to the county board to ask for that reconsideration.
Mr. Awesome.
Thank you. I think we're dealing with almost an $80 million budget here, and I think many of us would like to have our own changes to it and fine-tune it, but overall, this budget is, I think, pretty responsibly presented by the Finance Committee. And it's a 3% increase, whereas our tax levy is going up 5.54%. And Mr. King just made some remarks about we may have to consider other taxes in order to fund core services. And I think as we look ahead, we need to focus on what our core services are, and we may need to look at things like privatizing some of our purchases on services. So I think we should just defer to the Finance Committee's decision on this budget. We've cut the Sheriff's Department, we've cut public safety, we haven't fully funded the core service of highway, and I just think we should leave this alone and look at it next year. And I think we also ought to be looking forward at this time, especially what the implications of the tax base is going to be for the next 2 or 3 years. I received some statistics with the help of our Economic Development Department and the St. Croix Valley Home Builders Association, and I just want to bring to the attention of this body that we've had a 61% decrease in new construction building permits this year over last year, September to September. We've had a 38% decline in the value of that new construction. So it's declined from $140 million to about $87 million. These are going to have large implications on our ability to even fund our budget in the next 2 years. So I think the big picture is what's important here, and that we shouldn't fine-tune this budget and make decisions about adding an employee here or there. Thank you.
I would concur in the observation of the supervisor not to make this a full-time position. Placed in the historical context, we have been providing these services with a contracted person for over 15 years. So there is a fairly high amount of anecdotal evidence that we have been successfully meeting our responsibilities and obligations to this part of our constituency appropriately.
Well then, let's take a vote on the amendment. The amendment is to amend the budget by changing the status of the benefit specialist to a 35-hour per week employee instead of a contracted service provider. I see a question from Mr. Marzoff.
Mr. Chairman, could the vote be a roll call vote, please?
It could. And the clerk will call the roll. A yes vote is to amend the budget to make this an employee. A no vote is to leave it in the status quo.
Brian Hurchin? Yes. Julie Spear? Yes. Joe Hurchin? Yes. Bill Peavy?
Yes.
Gerald Peterson?
Yes.
Charlie Grant?
Yes.
Tom Dowd?
Yes.
Chuck Mills?
Yes.
Richard King?
Yes.
Wallace Habhager?
Yes.
John Mortensen?
Yes.
Esther Wentz?
Yes.
Gene Ritz?
Yes.
Gordon Awesome?
No.
Tom Kaflish?
No.
Chuck Strumke?
No.
Richard Marzoff?
Yes.
Sharon Norton Bauman?
No.
Ron Troyer?
No.
Roger Rebholz?
Yes.
Bill Cranmer?
No.
Daryl Stanifer?
No.
John Borup?
Yes.
Clarence Malick?
No.
Don Jordan?
No.
Rod Raymond?
No.
Cindy Leonard?
No.
Linda Lucky?
No.
Stan Kruger?
No.
Denise Gunderson?
Yes.
Lois Burry?
Yes.
14, 15, 16, 17. I have 18 yeses. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, yes. 18, 13.
The motion passes 18-13. So the budget is thereby amended, and it will have two, well, it will not have an impact as I see it on the first budget resolution, but it will have an impact on the one where we have the employees. That's, I think, item number 4 on our agenda. So somebody can be working on that for the time when we get to it. Let's continue the discussion and debate on the budget then. Mr. Cranmer.
I'd like to make a motion. I move to authorize the funding of a new temporary position of collection clerk in the St. Croix County Clerk of Circuit Court office during 2007 in order to collect overdue court fines, fees, fines, and assessments. The salary shall be $20,000 for a period of 6 months with no additional benefits and shall be paid from county reserve funds or other county funds. This temporary position may be renewed at the same salary for an additional 6 months with the agreement of both the county clerk of circuit court and the county finance committee.
Do you have that in written form that you can provide to the clerk?
Yes, I do, and I also have some additional copies.
As we have it so that we can move along. Mr. Rebholz?
I'll second the motion.
All right, motion from Mr. Rebholz. Thank you, Bill. Let me reread it for the benefit of those who don't have a copy. This is a motion to authorize the funding of a new temporary position of, quote, collection clerk, end quote, in the St. Croix County Clerk of Circuit Court office during 2007 in order to collect overdue court fees, fines, and assessments. The salary shall be $20,000 for a period of 6 months with no additional benefits and shall be paid from county reserve funds or other county funds. This temporary position may be renewed at the same salary for an additional 6 months with the agreement of both the County Clerk of Circuit Court and the County Finance Committee. Discussion. Mr. Cranmer.
I think this is obviously a difference in kind from most other positions that were...
Two lights on.
Okay, all right. I think this is a difference in kind from most other positions that were proposed to the County Finance Committee because this would bring in new income. The whole point of this is because there is a clear need in the county for additional flows of revenue. It is an experiment, as is obvious from the proposal. Currently, there is about $2.4 million overdue in the last decade in fees, fines, and assessments. 1.4 million of that is overdue in the last 5 years, so it is rising, has risen by about 40% over the last 5 years. Currently, and as I understand the data that was presented to me by the clerk of court, about 25% or more of the fees and fines that are being assessed by the courts are currently being unpaid. According to the data that was just presented by the Finance Committee, the fines and fees collection has been stagnant for several years. And so I think the clerk of court obviously, the clerk of court office is obviously in need of more staff to pursue the debtors. And the past approaches to this problem have not worked. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Standifer.
I would inquire of the supervisor what specifically he would propose that this person do in terms of job responsibilities to justify the temporary salary of $20,000, and where he thinks that person might come from, the availability of a person with particular expertise to be able to perform those functions in a temporary role at a very limited salary.
Well, that would be 20,000 for 6 months, as I understand it.
That is correct. It would be $20,000 for 6 months, and if it were renewed, then it would be approximately $40,000 for the year. I discussed this matter with the clerk of court, and she said that currently the job description that she had for this position was rated at $39,000 plus. And is Lori Meyer here? I guess not. But at any rate, I would assume that they would use the paths that they have taken in the past, but to attempt to, as an additional staff member, to try to collect the fines and fees as an additional staff member would, that is, putting in more hours and perhaps trying to attempt to find new strategies.
As I have kind of the same question, I don't think I really got an answer. I think the couple things I want to bring up is what authority does this person have? Do we need to grant authority? What are their procedures other than coming up with some new procedures? Which may be needed. This could be a cost paying for itself thing if they could create more revenue coming in. Another question is, don't we currently have collection agency for the county already trying to do this, and we should look at what we're doing there instead of creating a new position, give them different guidance or find a different collection agency as there is an obvious problem. And then if we were to hire somebody, I would be more, instead of paying them a salary, doing like the collection agency is and just giving them a percentage of what they take or what they get back to us, and then we don't create any salary obligations to the county. So as this stands, I cannot support this.
Well, this is great. I mean, I don't get excited very often, but as I think you all know my position on this thing because we researched this for about 3 years, and I would add to it questions. Number one, the work hours would or should be flexible in the sense that when we were talking over tactics about this on a couple of occasions, the phone calls, the follow-up calls, the letters, and things of this nature, some of this would be done during supper hours, so to speak, or from 4 to 7. This is one of the recommendations we had on the original committee. But I think it's worth a try. I think that you've got some untouched funds out there. And as far as the question regarding a collection agency, I don't know. Are people aggressively pursuing this right now as an agency? I don't think we are as a county itself. Reference Eau Claire County's procedures, Portage County, Waukesha, who was pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars. But with some dusting up of procedures and an actual mission statement on this thing, I think it's viable.
Mr. Kruger?
Yes. This problem, I talked to Sheila Harsdorf and Kitty Rose. This is really a state problem, and the state really hasn't addressed it yet. And when you look at $4 million and the state is owed 2.4 of it, and they don't want to address it down at the state capitol, I think we would be spinning our wheels on this situation. And I don't know how you're going to collect it. And if you got $4 million out there that's over 7 years old, your chances of collecting it, unless you're Irwin Jacobs, is slim and none. And I just can't see that. also, anytime you want to increase your budget here, I guess I would like to hear some solutions of where this money is gonna come from, because there's only so much money in the pie, people. If we take a piece of this pie out from here, we're gonna have to take it from another place. And we only have so much money to spend. And, you know, you can come up with all these resolutions, and they're fine, you have the right to, but we only have so much money to spend, and this was not a viable item for the Finance Committee until the state solves their problem with these fines and forfeitures.
There's a lot of truth in that, Stan, but my question is, you know, in December of 2005, we passed a resolution that this county would be actively involved in the pursuit of collection. We then, and I believe in March or April of this year, passed another resolution to be passed on to the Counties Association, suggesting that we have a procedure, something like child support, whose people can actually interdict the issuing of licenses for ATVs, hunting, fishing, and all other types of sporting activities until payments are made to child support. If we had that same procedure for fines and violations, you know, we'd be spending our time today counting money. But, you know, what has been done to push this on a county's level is my question. I didn't see anything in the agenda with the Counties Association meeting. I was not able to attend this year, but, you know, you're right in that sense, but I don't believe that we should really stop our procedures on a county level and wait for the state. I think there's things that can be done at the county level. We have the support of the media, and a person acting in the capacity of this motion, I think, could coordinate with the media, with enforcement, with the clerks. It's going to take judges. It's going to take a decided effort on the part of, I believe we said, 7 different departments to do this.
Well, I don't know how they've been doing it in Minnesota, but all of us reading the paper have seen the pictures and the people complaining about getting a bill for a past due violation plus interest. So somebody over there is pursuing it. I'd just like to find out, if we find out how they're doing it, that might answer Stan's question.
Can we hear from the clerk of court? I would like to know if the 20,000 is something that she would say is comfortably going to be absorbed by increased revenue?
Well, the Public Protection Committee has been studying this for over 3 years, and this year we went to the Finance Committee because the clerk of courts, the judges, and all the people involved in these fines, the majority of them come from the finance and under the curtain of the finance department. The comment made at that time was that we're going to carry this ball and make sure it goes through. Now we're hearing the complete opposite. I realize times are tough and the budget is tight, but by George, there are things that have to be done. And maybe we're looking in the wrong direction of cutting highway, cutting the sheriff, cutting all the health and human services, the 3 things that by statute are required by the county to do, and look at some of the other venues.
Well, I hope that this position, as Mr. Strumke said, would be self-funded. And so I don't think that what we need here is basically seed money. That's the way I look upon it. And I think that sometimes you have to spend money to make money. This is a clear case, I think, where that needs to be done because there is so little that the with the current staff levels that the clerk of court apparently has that she can do in additional pursual of debt. And as far as the collection agency, obviously the collections agency has been ineffective, or at least inadequate to the size of the task. And that will be, that is, what I hope is going to happen is that we are going to have an additional inflow of income, which will more than adequately cover the costs of this position.
What we're going to do now is, the clerk has located the clerk of court, whom you wish to hear, almost. So we are going to hear from the 4-Hers and then take a break. And is the Madam exhibit up yet? It probably is. So after we hear from the 4-Hers here in a few moments, then there'll be a break, ice cream, visit to the Mothers and Dads Against Meth, and then we'll pick up the discussion again. Hopefully the clerk of court will have the opportunity to break up her schedule and be here in front of us. Ice cream is this way, Madam is that way. Kim, do you have the young ladies there ready for their moment in the bright lights here?
I'm Mandy Shermer, and all three of us are 4-H ambassadors for the county. And other than in 4-H, other than just having fun, we actually do learn things like people skills. Every 4-H club has a president, and when you're president, you have to talk to the older leaders, to work with the younger members to teach them new things. So you get to actually talk to many different people, variety of ages. And another thing that everyone learns is like leadership skills. Like, I'm a president for my 4-H club, and all three of us have been officers before. So we learn leadership on how to teach the younger members how to do things and how they can like bring back to the community and teach them how to give to everyone other than just themselves.
Other than learning, we also give back to our community and families. We have fundraisers and donations, and we also do fun things too, like our family fun night and Halloween parties and stuff like that.
One of the opportunities that I've had through 4-H that I'm really grateful for is last summer I got to go to Nicaragua on sort of an exchange trip, and I learned a lot through that. It was a lot of fun, but we learned so much from the people because they're living in so much poverty, but they're some of the happiest people we've ever met, and they just taught me a lot about character and attitude. So I've been really grateful for that.
We all thank you for your support, and we, like he said, invite you for ice cream over in the room.
All right.
Well, it started out hard, but it's now soft serve.
We are in recess.
The Madam is not set up yet.
Not yet. Okay. Were you able to get Lori, or are they getting a message to her? And let her address this this proposal that that we have a 6 months temporary $20,000 no benefits person to help collect court fees, fines, and assessments sometime during 2007, Lori. That's what we have as a budget amendment here. $20,000 for 6 months, no additional benefits, paid from county reserves, renewable for an additional 6 months upon your approval with the concurrence of the Finance Committee.
Okay. Good morning. We've discussed this issue many times, as I'm sure you remember, and what I had proposed in our original budget was a base salary of about $38,000, which is a pay grade 5 position, comparable to financial assistance in the county. So I think where we came up with the $20,000 figure that was proposed today is without benefits, be half of that. Full-time position for 40 hours a week at a pay range 5 would be about $20,000 for 6 months. The main goal of the position would be collections, obviously. The person would issue wage assignments, follow up on those, do the research to find the employer, get the judge to sign the wage assignment, send those out to the employer, and then follow up on the collection aspect of that. Issue payment plans. We would develop guidelines for ability to pay. So an individual at the present time will go before the judge, be issued a fine. The judge will ask, mostly because of time constraints, how much can you afford to pay? There's no guidelines in place for determining their eligibility to pay or their capability. It's just if they tell the judge they can pay $25 a month, that's what's ordered. So the collection clerk position would actually have them pay a fee to apply for a payment plan, a $15 fee, and provide information on their income and their expenses. And obviously some expenses would be excluded, child support, mortgage payment, things like that. We'd get to the bottom line and look at the ability to pay. And then those guidelines would determine if they could pay $25 a month or $200 a month. And our hope is that we would improve our collections through that process, because I'm sure that there's many individuals who could pay their fine off in 1 or 2 months versus 2 years. So that's kind of the main focus of the position. Follow-up enforcement, of course, on all of those cases. The plan would be that we'd keep statistics on how many payment plans our office issues, how many wage assignments, and the bottom line, what's coming in on those cases. Questions?
To train a person, this is a 6-month proposal that we received today. And can you comfortably say that you can cover the 20,000 with expanded revenues?
Well, that would be our goal, our hope. The hardest part to quantify is we don't know what the judge would order, and if those people would follow through with their payment plan according to that order. So if the judge orders $25 a month and we determine that they're really able to pay $150 per month, we really wouldn't know which way, the old versus the new. It's kind of a guessing game.
It's my impression, Supervisor Cramner, that this would be to clean up uncollected bills, or am I misunderstanding your handout?
Yes, that's what I had in mind. It would be focused on the uncollected bills, but that is the experiment part of this, not just routine bills.
How much or what percent of the money that's due is owed by non-residents? And those are going to be the difficult problems.
Right. And our software doesn't allow us to break it down by geographic areas, so we guesstimate at approximately 50% are out of our area, maybe as much as 60%.
Again, how would you collect that from non-residents?
Right now, our only option is if they renew their license in another state. Sometimes it takes 2 to 5 years for us to catch up with them, but we do have reciprocity with most states. So if we suspend their driver's license for non-payment in Wisconsin and they go to renew that driver's license in that state, in the state they live in, at some point it will catch up with them. They will be forced to pay the fine. The only other option is if we issue a warrant for their arrest and they happen to be coming through our county and get picked up.
I understand all that because what we used to do when I worked with the DNR, we took something from the non-residents and they were put in the sheriff's office locked up. If they wanted it back, they had to come back.
The law's changed on that since then. We can't do that anymore.
Mr. Standifer.
Years and years ago, I feel like I want to say in a galaxy far, far away. Like every junior banker, I spent some time early in my career in the collections department. It was absolutely not a job that anybody would choose to do voluntarily. And the only reason you did it is because you were assigned to do it, and you knew eventually you wouldn't have to do it anymore. You could have a different job. The point I'm making is that for us to go out and find someone that would voluntarily want to do this job, and especially under the premise that it's a sunsetting position, it's a temporary 6-month position, I think would make it very difficult to find someone with the skill set to be able to do this job in a manner that we would have a high degree of confidence that the expenditure of any salary amount would generate a payback. And as I was speaking with Bill during the break, if I thought that this had a realistic probability of generating a dent into the unpaid fines and items that are owed to the county, I'd be on board in a second. I would love to collect that. I just don't have a high degree of confidence that this is the correct route to go to try and do that. With no criticism intended, I think this is a feel-good resolution. It would make us feel good that we're doing something. Having said that, I doubt that this would have a high degree of success. I would prefer that we look at the procedures that we're using right now and verify are they appropriate. If we are or are not to a significant degree utilizing professional expertise in this ability, maybe we ought to evaluate that. I just think if we're going to spend money with the expectation that it's going to create a revenue stream, it ought to have a higher degree of probability than what I think is implicit in this resolution.
Okay, I have just a couple of comments or responses there. One, Eau Claire County has added 3 of these positions in the last 5 years. They believe it's successful. They've been able to quantify it and justify it to their board. In terms of recruiting, they obviously haven't had a problem with that, and I would think that this is similar to a child support enforcement position, and I don't believe we've had any trouble recruiting individuals to do that. I did that type of work in child support before I was the clerk of court, and it was similar. You determine, you look at their income and their financial ability to pay. You look at the whole picture. You take them to court. It's very similar. So I don't think that recruitment is going to be an issue. And we can certainly look at our practices. The legislature has given us some excellent tools in terms of the suspension of license, the tax intercept, issuing the warrants, wage assignments. Our biggest issue is we don't have staff time to do payment plans, to put people on stricter plans than what we have now. It's a pretty loose system. And we don't have time to issue wage assignments and do the follow-up in any of those cases. So our staff is doing everything that is available to us in terms of the tools the legislature has provided us. But we don't have time to do any follow-up phone calls, wage assignments, and or issue payment plans.
Mr. Strumke.
Yes, I'm concerned that this probably has some merit, this motion does, but I think there's a lot of information that we're really not prepared to gather from people today on this. I think issues as far as what the guidelines would be for the person, what collection efforts are already being made. We have a collection agency already supposedly doing something. To get all that information to make a good decision on this, I don't think we have today. So because of that, I'd like to make a motion that this is tabled and referred to the Finance Committee for them to take a look at and come back in a couple months with all the data that I think we have concerns.
Just consulting my guide here, a motion to table requires a second. It is not debatable. It requires a majority vote. Is there a second? Mr. Mortensen seconds the motion to table. All in favor of, and the motion was to table it, refer it to the Finance Committee for a report back. Correct. And subsequent discussion here. All right, all in favor of the motion should now vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion to table passes. So that amendment is off for now, and we'll expect something from the Finance Committee after study and analysis to come back to this county board at a future date. Mr. Kruger, is that okay?
Yes.
Mr. Mells?
Before we turn lawyer loose, appreciate your coming down. The procedure for interviewing the person that's been fined, let's say he hasn't been fined, or he's been fined, but can this be done before the judge actually makes a decision how much to pay? In other words, right now, it's a matter of, it looks like you can pay 25 a month, but your investigation then with this person might say that he can pay 100 a month. Could this be done before the judge makes a decision? I know the judge would refer to this person to do a workup on them.
We'd probably need the judges to create an order or a rule, wouldn't we?
Right, and we could be doing it on a lot of cases where they're not fined.
Yeah.
So, doesn't seem
You
to me
probably
like
can't
the
answer that
best
right now,
option.
yeah. But this is why the judge would have to be included in this procedure.
All right, we're back to the main motion on the budget. Other discussion, or Mr. Mells?
Go Vikings. Folks, this this proposal that you have in front of you is kind of I'm not saying it's a last-minute effort, but let me preface it by saying that it's not to increase the proposed 2007 budget, all right? It's strictly separate from that. But when Supervisor Kruger was making the presentation, you saw that the dispatch center, the communications center lost, I shouldn't say lost, but, and it wasn't cut. It wasn't cut, okay? It was reduced by 2 people. Actually, what it was 1 full-time employee and 2.7 employees this year. And of course, this was reduced, for obvious reasons. And they've done their homework and everything on this thing, but folks, this thing really hurts. Let me give you 2 examples here to back up this proposal. One is that with a new police station in Star Prairie, a portion of that will be what might be called a satellite sheriff's department. Now, we already have one of those in Baldwin. And with the addition of a computer out there, the officers are able to save time and mileage by filing some of the reports at the Baldwin office. The same procedure will be used in Star Prairie for officers operating in that particular sector of operation. Now, when that's done, it's estimated, and we've gone over this in public protection, that it's probably going to save 5 or 6 hours a day for the 5 or 6 officers that are on the road. Now, what that means, they can spend more road time, and what that also means, there's going to be more communication going back and forth to the dispatch center. A second example is that, and this is positive enforcement, we have this Operation Click It or Ticket procedure, where a grant is received by the Sheriff's Department to provide heavy emphasis on enforcing the seatbelt laws. And this summer, with that taking place, over 200 people were stopped. I think a couple of warrants were found, and arrests were made, and a lot of citations were made, I believe over 200. What this also did was add more volume to the dispatch center. And ironically, 4 other communities took part in this click it or ticket type of a thing. Their officers are out there stopping vehicles, and of course your 1028s and 29s and everything were pumped into the dispatch center, involving more work. What it amounts to is that overload means overtime. Now, with this in mind, we're to the point of almost getting desperate on this thing. We would like to reinstate 1 dispatcher or a 0.7 FTE dispatcher. And to do this, the proposal would be this. we'd finance this to a portion, the 7/10 portion, which normally would have been $43,595. If we delayed filling that position until April, we'd reduce that amount to about $32,696. How could we do that without interfering with the proposed budget and everything that's already been laid out in front of you? Is that we've saved $11,200 by not having a performance bond issued for the new equipment that's already been installed in the comm center. The equipment was installed so fast on a 24-hour-a-day basis down there that it was felt in consultation with Corp Council that it was installed, the technicians inspected it, it was put online, and we did not need the performance bond. So that $11,200, what about the remaining $21,000? I would submit that we could try to get this through the present tax intercept program. Now, these are the people, the deadbeats, if you will, that have their tax intercept filings already done by Lori's office. These things are on file. They submit something like $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 a year. Now, we're certainly not going to get all of that back, but we should be able to make enough to fund that position. The primary months for collecting under tax intercept used to be like March, April 15 deadline, May, and so on. But now with electronic processing, a lot of these monies are coming in January, February, and March. So I would like to see 0.7 of a dispatcher reinstated, but only funded under those particular packages.
Mr. Kruger, did you wish to respond to that?
Yes, your item A, utilizing 11,200 saved in the 2006 from not requiring the performance bond for the cellular E911 project. We borrow for that project, and the grant dollars are coming back to repay that debt. So we can't use that money because we cut off our debt off there. And then utilizing the $21,496 from the Wisconsin Tax Refund Intercept Program, that's already been recorded in 2006 in revenue in the clerk of court's office.
So this cannot be earmarked for anything? Has it been earmarked for something?
Nope, it goes into the general fund. You'd have to change the budget from 2006 and 2007.
Just so you folks are aware that we've got an overload down there in that dispatch center, okay? And there are several other reasons for the overload other than the two examples that I mentioned. But I know that this year is ugly and next year is going to be uglier yet, but we're going to have to come back and get some more people down there. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Supervisors, are you ready to vote on the budget now? Mr. Raymond?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to bring up a couple of things. I'm not requesting an additional position, and I'm not going to try to reinstate things that weren't the non-cuts, the reductions. But I want to talk to Parks and a little bit to the 2008 budget. And I'm going to use Parks because I happen to be involved in that. I think it applies to others. But we went, and you can see on the slides, we cut 89% of the Parks capital budget. And I think this is the second year that's happened. Last year, we as a committee cut the dickens out of it, and this year, we gave the finance committee the ability to do it. And what this is the maintenance funds. 5 or 6 years ago, you may recall, we did an audit at Parks Department, and we found we had about $500,000 worth of maintenance that wasn't done. And we've spent 5 or 6 years digging out of that with grant money and county monies and stuff. And we finally are on kind of a maintenance program. This is 2 years in a row that we've not funded this program. And it's getting to the point that okay, we can live with it, but as we go forward into 2008, I think we've got to start looking at what's the county really got to provide, and what can be provided elsewhere in the private segment, contracting for services or something. 2008 is going to be an ugly year, and I'd like to put in a plug for
coming back and looking at funding some of these things. If you go into famous cities in the world, they're not known for their prisons or their public employee services or other things. They're known for the parks and the museums and yes, indeed, the libraries. And I think we got to pay some attention to that infrastructure along with roads as we go forward. So that's my plug for parks, not in the sense that we need to fund it this year, but I think we need to look at all of these things that where we're doing some dumb things to meet the budget today. Let's try not to do those things again in 2008. On land conservation, we cut a truck. Last year, the committee cut the truck. This is a 94 S10. It's getting just a little long in the tooth. We're going to stretch it out, and we'll get probably another year out of it, maybe. We've got a roll of baling wire and pliers we put in the glove compartment now so that it makes it. But we'll be back next year. But I think that's indicative of the things that we got to do. We're operating, 94, but I don't think we should be running around in 2005 SUVs, but certainly a 94 is getting to the point where it's probably not going to do the job anymore. Thank you.
Mr. Standifer.
I'd like to use one of the phrases that the supervisor used as a segue into another comment. And I would also like to re-characterize a different phrase that he used. The reference was maybe unfortunate when he suggested that we have some dumb things in the budget. I guess I would characterize those as painful things in the budget. And if you would accept that, I would prefer that characterization. But the supervisor used the phrase coming back. Several times as we went through the exercise in the several days of budget hearings that we had in finance when we were undergoing this painful exercise to get to the document that's in front of you today, we observed that we may well have an opportunity to come back later in the year, depending on some circumstances that we do not know at this juncture exactly how they'll play out. But we have later on today on our agenda a resolution that at least begins to move in the direction of developing an exit strategy or looking at appropriate alternatives for the nursing home. As you are aware, one of the largest single items that's in the nursing home in terms of pressure on the levy is a subsidy of about $1.3 million. If we are able to successfully in fiscal 2007 resolve that to the result that there are unspent levy dollars that go into the nursing home operations, we have observed that we may well have an opportunity to come back and look at some of the things that we were not able to incorporate into this budget from the requests of the departments. While there's no guarantee that that can happen in terms of timing, there's no guarantee that we will able to successfully resolve what we're doing there in fiscal 07 or that it will result in unspent levy dollars, there is that opportunity. And I think what it does is give us the incentive to in fact successfully resolve that in 07 so that we can come back and look at some other things.
Mr. Timmerman has given me a revised budget resolution to replace the one that was sent to you last week, and it now includes what we have amended to make the benefits specialist position a permanent employee position at 35 hours per week. So when I get ready to, when you're about ready to vote, I'll read that to you, and that's the way we'll deal with that amendment. Mr. Strumke.
Just a couple questions, and then, well, I guess they're all questions. I noticed on page 4, and we don't need to bring it up unless there's a desire by somebody else, but it talks about the financial budget highlights. In specifics, as I'm a persistent, ever-ready bunny on this insurance cost, I noticed that there's a 29% increase from last year to next year, or this year to next year, on the insurance liability, or liability insurance premium, basically taking it to $1 million. Now, this is not health insurance or anything else. It says distribution of liability insurance, $970,000 plus. I guess the question I'm asking here is, I can understand the increase that happened because of the sheriff's department, the jail strip search issue lawsuit. But what is going on in the county that, and where is it going on that's justifying an insurance carrier charging such large increases? I got more questions, but we'll go one at a time.
That doesn't all go to our insurance carrier. Being self-insured essentially for the first $1.5 million worth of claims, what we're trying to do is build up our own internal liability fund to a $600,000 amount. So while we'll charge departments based on a formula that we have to recover costs, we'll put that into the fund. We'll pay out our claims in the fund. We also pay out our premiums for the liability insurance from that fund, because we still have to pay for the reinsurance essentially.
Okay, so how much is being moved of that $1 million, relatively speaking, into building up our $600,000 fund
That
balance?
off the top of our head? I don't,
It's probably not a large amount of money, so.
It's not in it, and we don't actually have our premium renewal notice yet from WMIC. I was at their meetings 2.5 weeks ago, and the initial number looks pretty good relative to what we've had in terms of the cost. In fact, it may actually be a small decrease in what we've had in the past.
But that still, begs the actual question. What is actually driving, we'll take 2% and say that's going over into building up our fund. What's driving the 27% increase in our insurance premiums? I don't know, because we don't get reported to on insurance claims, and maybe that's an issue we should address later at the board, but, what lawsuits are going on, what departments are the bigger problems, and maybe the board needs to take a look at what's going on as far as operational procedures within the county, because that's a heck of a lot of money.
And then maybe that would help satisfy your questions on this. We haven't really gone through that in a full sense with the finance committee, other than to explain how it works, but we could certainly put together some sort of a presentation. I'm not in a position to tell you what we've got out there for actual claims, but we do have claims now and then, things that just happen, but nothing on a serious scale like what we've had. So I'm kind of not in a position where I can really.
Well, then I would, myself, and if other board supervisors would like it, I would like a breakdown of our insurance claims of anything over, some fixed number. I don't need to, I'm not concerned about, 5,000 or something, but, to be paying out $1 million in insurance coverage for liability is a lot of money, and the only reason insurance carriers charge that is because you got either a risk or a history. And I know we covered the history issue right after the strip search issue.
Right.
Lest there be a misimpression, what is the premium number? Do you have that in mind? Because this 970 is partly premium, but it's partly our own internal payment process. I'm sure you understood that, but I'm not sure it came through in words. What's the premium?
The premiums budgeted for '07 are slightly lower than '06, and we would have been allocating the '06 numbers. The total premiums for all the insurances within this fund, it's more than just liability insurance, are budgeted at $500,000 for '07.
Okay, well, I'm looking at maybe we need to bring that up here, because I'm looking at page 4 here, and I'm looking at what it was called. And it's called liability insurance costs, $970 million.
That's chart 14, Mr. Chairman.
Slide number 14.
Yeah, it's 14 on your,
Right,
your
14.
PowerPoint presentation.
And regardless of what the actual dollar is, the justification, I guess, is the biggest question. It's a lot of money, and we can debate where it's all, what the coverage is, but it's a liability insurance, as the slide states. And and it's a 29% increase. And so, you know, I'd kind of like to know why we're paying a 29% increase again, and why such a huge amount?
I think that the thing for us to do is let me get my risk manager, Kristen Ziliak, in here and go through it. You can ask some of the other questions, and we can take some time to go through this. I know what you're getting at, and that isn't where my brain has been here the last couple of weeks, and she's much better at explaining it than I am.
I do not intend to.
Could we do that next month?
Yeah, I'm not
That'd be
intending to
all
hold the
right?
budget up on that. It's a question pertaining to the budget. I would like to have that information
Sure, we can do that.
presented.
So next meeting, let's have a presentation on insurance and try to answer as many questions as people have. Back to you, Mr. Strumke.
I'll defer the rest. I think I can get more when they make that presentation.
Anybody else who wants to be heard on the budget resolution before we vote on it?
Mr. Chairman, we have two positions that we still have to talk about. Number 4 and number 5.
Agenda items 4 and 5? Yes, feel free to discuss them at this point. My intention was to take a vote on 1C as soon as you're all ready for it here. That is the budget resolution, and it has now been amended so that the benefits specialist is a permanent employee position for 35 hours per week. Otherwise, it's the same as you had it in your packet materials. So that's the only amendment we have at this point. Are you ready to vote on it? Then we'd of course take a roll call vote on the budget. And then we'll after that take up 2, 3, and 4, one after the other. Does that make sense or not?
No, but shouldn't the number 4, which is the drug court, and number 5 be included in this one before we vote on the budget?
Well, yes, in a sense they are. Number 5 is merely a job description change. There's no budget implication, and so that's not implicated in the first 4 items. Number 4, as it was sent to you in your packet, is the only position that the Finance Committee recommended approval of. I was thinking earlier in the day when we were dealing with the amendment to convert the benefits specialist to an employee that we should modify number 4 so there would be 2 positions on there, the drug court and the benefits specialist. Mr. Timmerman tells me the better way to do it is to incorporate it in the resolution 1C. So that's the way we're proposing to do it. Would you, does that answer it? Okay, good. Gotta be careful, keep the papers in the right order here. Forgive me. Are you now ready to vote on the budget resolution as it has been amended to include that 1 employee change? All right, the clerk will call the roll, please.
Julie Spear? Yes. Joe Hurchin? Bill Peavy?
Yes.
Gerald Peterson?
Yes.
Charlie Grant?
Yes.
Tom Dowd?
Yes.
Chuck Mills?
Yes.
Richard King?
Yes.
Wallace Halbhager?
Yes.
John Mortensen?
Yes.
Esther Wentz?
Yes.
Jean Ritz?
Yes.
Gordon Awesome?
Yes.
Tom Kaplish?
Yes.
Chuck Strumke?
Yes.
Richard Marzloff?
Yes.
Sharon Norton Bowman?
Yes.
Ronald Troyer?
Yes.
Roger Rebholz?
Yes.
Bill Cranmer?
Yes.
Daryl Stanifer?
Yes.
John Borup?
Yes.
Clarence Malick?
Yes.
Don Jordan?
Yes.
Ron Raymond?
Yes.
Cindy Leonard?
Yes.
Linda Lucky?
Yes.
Stan Kruger?
Yes.
Denise Gunderson?
Yes.
Lois Burry?
Yes.
Brian Hurchin?
Yes.
Unanimously approved. This is the point where we usually thank the finance, sorry?
I want to thank the Finance Committee members, staff here, you as supervisors for all the help you've done in this budget. It couldn't have been done without you. If you think I'm shining, the people that helped on this budget is shining too. They're shining brighter. And thank each and every one of you.
That positions us for a vote on item number 2, the resolution approving the County Aid Bridge construction, which is, of course, already incorporated in the budget. Could we have the formality of a motion?
I'll bring that forward.
Mr. King moves it, Mr. Grant seconds it. Any discussion? I don't think we need a roll call when we've already done a roll call. All in favor should vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Number 3, the County Aid Road construction, which is also incorporated in the budget. Motion from
I'll bring that forward.
Supervisor King, the Chair of the Transportation Committee, second from Mr. Peterson. All in favor should now vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. And the last one that's incorporated in the budget is the resolution approving new positions to begin in 2007. The previous discussion applies. Motion comes from Finance, I suppose. Mr. Kruger, are you making it? Second, Mr. Kaflich. All in favor, Mr. Strumke.
Just, I look at 65,000 as a substantial amount of money for an employee. I would like maybe the finance or public protection, whoever's the overseer, that could answer the justification for 65,000 plus what percentage of that 65,000 is tied up in benefits.
One thing I asked a similar question, and this salary is, shall we say, close enough for budgeting purposes, but when the actual person is hired, there may be some variation. The assumption being that some are hired higher and some are hired lower in the course of a whole year of county turnover. The position has also not been, what do we say, position description has not been assigned points and gone through that technical process. So it's a bit approximate, but then fringes generally run 40% or so, don't they? What do you got?
Fringes are 21% excluding health insurance. If I've backed into this correctly, the salary would be approximately $26,000.
Salary or fringe?
Salary.
Salary.
26?
Yeah. The insurance would be $11,000.
No, that doesn't sound right. Okay.
No. The insurance is $11,000 health insurance. Right?
Listen closely, you'll hear a large truck backing up.
That is about the cost of insurance.
35%, I would guess, all the fringe packages roughly.
Okay, the total salaries would be $45,000.
Yeah, I do appreciate that information. I think the supervisors should pay attention to that when they start taking a look at creating creating contracted positions over to county employee positions. That's a pretty expensive benefit package, and I hope the county employees appreciate that, because the taxpayers in this county are paying a lot of money for those benefits.
All right, I think that, let's see, we got a motion, we got a second, we're ready to vote. All in favor should now vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Number 5 probably needs a little explanation as to how this got here, although I think it was mentioned in something that I read. Mr. Kruger?
This was a position that was approved last year. And again, it's something that slipped through the cracks, and this is just a paperwork to correct an error that we missed. The child support administrator in child support assistant case aides in the child support department. So it was approved last year, but we didn't approve it on the county board floor.
No, it's in the nature of a technical amendment or a catch-up. We had one a few months ago that was a similar thing. You're making the motion then, Mr. Kruger?
Yes, I am.
Is there a second? Ms. Spear, thank you. Anybody have questions about that? Mr. Cranmer?
Is there any money attached to this, that, back wages or additional?
Nope.
Okay.
In a word, no. All in favor should now vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. The next one up is the resolution to charge back municipalities due to incorrect real estate taxes. This is a pro forma document that usually comes to us this time of year from the treasurer's office. Has to do with little mistakes in assessments and other sorts of things. This arrives before this board after being vetted by the Finance Committee, so I suppose it's your motion, Mr. Kruger?
Yes, it is.
With a second by Ms. Wentz. Any questions? All in favor should now vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. And the next one is the reimbursement for listing officials for listing dogs. This again arrives here from the Finance Committee. Mr. Kruger?
I'll make this the motion to put it on the floor.
Second, Mr. Kaflish. Anybody want to ask questions about it? There could be loads of discussion about the dogs and the dog listing and what happens to the fees, and it would give Ms. Campbell an opportunity to shine. No questions? All right, all in favor should vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes unanimously. Number 8, comprehensive planning grant for St. Croix County. Mine looks like this. It comes from the Planning and Zoning Committee. Your motion, Mr. Habiger. Second from Ms. Burry. Roll call vote is being requested. Anybody have questions or want discussion on it? Ms. Wentz.
May I ask, if we do get the grant, where is the $75,000 going to come from? And is this going to be during calendar year 2007?
Who knows the answer to that question? Is it in the 2007 budget already? Approaching the microphone is Dave Fedrosi, Director of the office.
Yes, the necessary matching funds and the revenues are included in the 2007 budget. No additional county funds. These are done with other funding sources and in-kind match as a part of the grant. It will actually be spread over the 3 years of the grant application.
And this is all a part of our process of getting our comprehensive plan ready before 2010, meeting the so-called smart growth law deadline, I take it. Yep. Mr. Awesome.
Mr. Ferdosi, the county board adopted a goal of developing an energy policy and looking at using renewable energy in the county. What do you plan on doing during this planning process to move that goal forward?
This would be the most appropriate place to deal with that on a long-term basis, and there are 9 different elements required to be included in the comprehensive plan, and there are probably half of those where energy issues could be appropriately considered and dealt with.
I take it you're ready to vote? This will be a roll call vote, so if the clerk will call the roll, we'll proceed through that.
Joe Hurchin? Bill Peavy?
No.
Gerald Peterson? Charlie Grant?
Yes.
Tom Dowd? Chuck Mills? Richard King?
Yes.
Wallace Habhager?
Yes.
John Mortensen?
Yes.
Esther Wentz? Jean Ritz? Gordon Awesome? Tom Kaflish? Chuck Strumke?
Yes.
Richard Marzoff?
Yes.
Sharon Norton Bauman? No. Ronald Troyer?
Yes.
Roger Rebholz?
No.
Bill Cranmer?
Yes.
Daryl Standifer,
Yes.
John Borup,
Yes.
Clarence Malik,
Yes.
Don Jordan, Ron Raymond, Cindy Leonard, Linda Lucky, Stan Kruger,
Yes.
Denise Gunderson, Lois Burry, Brian Hirchin,
Yes.
Julie Spear, 7 noes. 7 and 24.
The resolution passes by a vote of 24-7. Next is amendments to the code relative to livestock facility siting. This also comes from the Planning and Zoning Committee. Mr. Habeger, is it your motion? Second from Mr. Troyer. Anybody have questions or desire discussion of it? No questions? Sounds like we're ready to, Ms. Norton Bauman.
Yes, I have one question, Mr. Chairman. I notice in here that currently parcels of 2.5 acres in an ag residential are allowed to have one animal, and this changes it to 3 acres. What will that do to the people who currently have a horse on their 2.5 acres?
My apologies. This will do nothing, Mr. Chairman. They can continue to have that horse. Grandfathered? Definitely grandfathered.
Point of clarification on that, if a person that is grandfathered in under that property sells the property, will the new owner be able to have that animal unit?
Is the answer,
Mr.
I don't
Chairman,
know?
I think, if you don't mind, I'd like to defer that to our resident experts. The staff, please.
Mr. Bezick, do you know the answer to that question? If property that is 2.5 acres now and the resident has a horse on it, and if they sell it to another person, will they still be able to have a horse on that 2.5 acres?
If they continue, it's a non-conforming use, if they continue the non-conforming use, yes, it could stay. If it discontinues for a period of 12 months, then no.
Standard zoning stuff. Mr. Raymond?
Yeah, in our review of this at Land Conservation, and I could be in error, but I thought I was told that the current ordinance today doesn't allow horses. And is my recollection correct, or is it in error? Our current ordinance does not allow horses.
It does allow, as far as I know.
Do you know that one, Mr. Bezick? Does our current ordinance allow a horse on 2.5 acres?
Well, Supervisor Raymond is correct in that if you look at the existing ordinance chart, horses aren't technically an agricultural use, or listed as a permitted agricultural use. So by changing the language in the way that we are, we're correcting something that very obviously goes on in the county.
Since the microphone would not necessarily pick that up for the tape, let me repeat that the current ordinance does not define a horse as an agricultural use, and therefore the current ordinance does not authorize a horse. This would correct that. Mr. Raymond?
How can we grandfather in something that doesn't have a father? If it's not permitted, the reason I asked the question, if it's not permitted in the current ordinance, and the new ordinance changes the acreage on which it's now permitted, how can we grandfather in something that wasn't
Why
permitted?
can't it be great-grandfathered? There was
Okay,
no
okay.
prohibition prior to
I
the
didn't
present
go-
ordinance.
I didn't go far enough back in the lineage.
That would seem logically to make sense to me, that prior to the existing ordinance, it was permitted. Mr. B?
Just a brief comment on that. And that would be only in the agricultural and agricultural 2 districts in which the minimum lot sizes are 35 acres and 20 acres respectively. So you won't see too many properties in that 2.5 to 3 acre situation in the agricultural districts. So that'd be a very rare occurrence.
Mr. Strumke.
I just need a clarification, because on the back side of the cover sheet, page 2 then, it states, and farm animals and horses are clearly listed under farm animals. Are we talking apples and oranges, or?
Okay. Well, I'd like to preface, as hard as we tried not to regulate horses, they were a fallout of this amendment. The old ordinance had a definition of farm animals in which horses were included in that definition. The livestock sighting regulations do not include horses as livestock. There's just a very specific number of animals or types of animals that are listed as livestock. And we lumped all other animals together as a group in which horses fall in, with bison and anything else you can think of.
Ms. Spear.
I know we're under the gun here as far as getting this done, because I was tomorrow, if they're not, this ordinance isn't taken care of, then they will have no regulations whatsoever. In the country today, last week, the board, the livestock sitting board, couldn't even hear their first case because it wasn't filled out right. Your public hearing, was that the only one on October 19th?
Correct, that was the only public hearing we had.
What time, when did that go out to the townships? I noticed that there were only 4 out of approximately 20 people that came from the townships. When did the notice of that public hearing go out to the towns? I'd like to have the date, please.
I'll have to check on the exact date, but it went out well before. We notified the towns very early on, as soon as we set the date for the public hearing. The towns were notified before it even went to the papers.
Well, my reason for asking is that the meeting dates for the townships, 7 of them are in the first week of the month. The remaining 14 are in the second week. Now, if the notice didn't get out prior to them being able to talk to their own boards and the people that are there, it seems to me that this is all just a little bit short.
Yeah, well, I will, and I apologize if there's any towns that, okay, the notice was sent out to the towns Friday, September 29th, was the publication submittal deadline that we sent to the paper, and then we noticed all the towns at the same time. 4 towns showing up at the public hearing. Actually, from my experience in the last 2 years, that's actually a pretty good turnout at our public hearings for townships. And I didn't have any other calls from any other township officials over that whole period of time. So if there are concerns by township officials, and I did go to the town association meeting and got no questions whatsoever at the town association meeting.
Mr. Standard.
I live in the village of North Hudson, so this is not directly germane to me, but I'm just wondering if I could get some benefit out of this. If I'd agree to accept a horse, could I get rid of the 5 deer that hang around my place?
Yeah, but you got to take on 3 pigs and a couple chickens, too. Actually, the town of Hudson is out of our jurisdiction completely, so you can have anything you want there.
It's in the village. I take that as the moral equivalent of a motion to end debate.
Yeah.
All right. All who are in favor of adopting this should now vote aye. Aye. And oppose nay. I see we're at 12:15, and I'd like to get a sense of how many people are likely to want to be heard on this next topic. The only thing remaining for action, the resolution regarding the RFP on the nursing home. We'll have a presentation that will take roughly half an hour, I guess. X question. I saw something similar at the Health and Human Services Board. How many folks from the public would like to be heard on this nursing home resolution today? That plan to speak if they can do so? Is there anybody who wants to speak? There is just 1, 2, 3. Okay, under our rules, you should get together with a supervisor from your district because that's the way to get to the microphone under a process like this one, which is not a public hearing, but is a simple action on a motion. So touch base with the supervisor of your district so that person can recommend you to the board to speak. It looks like if we only have three, a 3-minute deadline will be sufficient, and we won't have to put other limits on the matter. Let's plow ahead without a break for lunch. Unless somebody wants to make a motion to overrule the chair on that, that would be my determination that we just keep going. Many of us have not seen the Mothers and Dads Against Meth exhibit either, so we can do that after we do this. Do we need a recess break before we launch here?
I say so.
There's one.
Citizens can give their supervisor.
Oh, that would facilitate that too, yes. So why don't we have just a 5-minute recess, and you folks who want to speak, find your supervisor, give them your name, and get set up to be introduced. Services Board, Ms. Wentz?
I would move it to the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Ms. Burry? And that's the item that we were provided in our packets, this resolution about a committee and a request for proposals operation there. And where do we go from here? Mr. Johnson and... For those of you who may have forgotten his name, Fred Johnson, the Director of Health and Human Services.
Thank you for the time on the agenda today. As the Health and Human Services Board has begun to address the issue of requests for proposals for the nursing home, we have asked Larry Lester for assistance in addressing some of the issues that we face. Larry is a senior manager, nursing home consultant with Wifley. Larry completed the presentation that you're about to see for Health and Human Services with some very minor modifications in October. And based on the feedback from board members and staff, we felt it would be appropriate to have Larry come and present to the full board today as you have the resolution or request for proposal in front of you. So I'd like to introduce Larry.
Thanks for having me here today. As Fred said, we had kind of been given the task by the Healthcare Committee to look at some options regarding the healthcare center and actually the funding of the healthcare center and that type of stuff, and the RFP that is before you. Kind of an overview of how we got to this point, I guess, and as I told the Healthcare Committee, as a county, you're not alone. We've probably in the last year probably worked with 6 or 8 counties with the same type of question, really starting out with how can we modify our operations in order to reduce our expenses or increase our revenue, all the way up from that to we actually assisted one county through the RFP process already. So with that, we're going to kind of walk through some different options out there to impact the healthcare center. Some of them you can do without the RFP. Some of them have already been looked at, and then some of them are actually part of the RFP process. Operational changes, and this always starts kind of where you start with is the Wisconsin, and a big part of the payer type for the healthcare center obviously is the Medicaid program. One of the disadvantages that a county-operated home has under the Medicaid program is that Medicaid typically sets reimbursement based on the averages of all nursing homes in the state. They don't look specifically if you're a not-for-profit or if you're a for-profit or if you're a county home. The real only exception to that on the county side is the intergovernmental transfer funds that the counties get. That's really the only excluding item that falls into that. And so if you have things that are outside, quote, the norm, on the nursing home level, then that makes reimbursement to you less than what your expenses are. Realizing that probably 80% of the facilities in the state have a Medicaid deficit, all facilities, okay? So some of the things that, again, have been looked at and continue to be looked at, the first study that was actually done by the Healthcare Committee really focused on what type of changes could happen at the healthcare center level to improve operations. The next step above that, and even a continuation of that, are the things you have before you now. Obviously, the health insurance portion of what the facility pays is not at the facility's level control. It's actually, I think, controlled by the county and negotiated through that. So that's an area that hasn't been addressed yet, that's an option out there, an opportunity. Current wage scale, we had provided, I know Fred, with some information on where the county falls versus other facilities wage scale wise, paid time off policy, modified policy regarding staff reductions and census decreases, and then discussions with other possible concessions as unions. So this is really saying, if we wanted to, before we went to the RFP process, or as we're going through the RFP process, are there operational changes that we can try to make alongside the RFP process to help operations also? So this is kind of the starting point of the discussion. At the Health and Human Services meeting, one of the questions came up and said, from a facility revenue standpoint and a facility expenses standpoint, where does the county fall? And this information is actually out of the 2005 Medicaid cost report database that the state accumulates. And as you can see, from amount of revenue, again, per bed, St. Croix Healthcare Center, and then compared to the 90th, the 75th, and the 50th percentile, St. Croix Healthcare Center on a revenue basis is at about the 56th percentile. So they're a little above average on the amount of revenue per bed. This number, okay, does not include intergovernmental transfer dollars. Okay, so the IGT money that the county gets for the healthcare center is not included in that ranking. On the expense side, again, same type of comparison. The healthcare center compared to the state's 90th, 75th, and 50th percentile, the healthcare center is in the 91st percentile for total expenses for per bed. And again, that relates a lot, first of all, to the state pension, which again is in part of your program that a lot of facilities don't have. It deals with the fringe benefits factors, the amount of health insurance that the county pays compared to a for-profit or not-for-profit organization. So that just gives you an idea of kind of where it falls, both expenses and revenue. And again, that was requested from the previous meeting. Another option, and this was actually part of the Whipley report that we had presented to the Healthcare Center Committee under the last review, is as you all know, that the Healthcare Center went through a downsizing, phase-down program, and part of that, they had decided to stop at 72 beds, is how far they wanted to downsize to. There's actually a provision under the Medicaid program that if you go down to 50 beds, there's actually an enhancement in your Medicaid rate for being a smaller facility. And so again, obviously you'd have to look at the need and the utilization in the county, but there is that option out there. So what we did is we went, and as of September 2006, we went and looked at how many empty beds were in the county of St. Croix, and there are 47 empty beds, not including any empty beds at the healthcare center. Okay, so the first question would be, would it be possible to downsize to 50 beds and have capacity in some other facility to take those residents? The answer is yes. Okay, I think the census at the healthcare center is somewhere in the high 60s, so if you went down to 50, there would be enough empty beds in the county to take those residents. So that kind of says, yes, it's possible. What does it mean after that? And this is a lot of numbers. You know, accountants, we like our numbers. But the bottom line is in the direct care component, which is right here, for nursing, which is made up of your nursing, the state actually increases your direct care component by 120%. So in essence, the bottom line is if you were a 50-bed facility, based on your July 105 rates, your rate for your SNF, which is where most of your patients fall, would be about $15 higher than it is today. Okay, again, why do they have that? Because you still have to have a DON, you still have to have all these other services that a bigger facility has, and this is just kind of equals or kind of balances out the playing field between the small facility and the big facility. Okay, so that's another option out there in essence to help reduce the impact of the healthcare center. The key with this is though, is as we get into the RFP process, you may get somebody that comes in and wants the RFP process that says, we want more than 50 beds. So you really need to kind of, if you do the RFP, you really need to look at both those at the same time, because you wouldn't want to give away the beds, downsize, and then have somebody come in and say, well, we wanted those additional beds. So, okay, but this is, again, this is just based on Medicaid rules. It's another incentive out there if you were a 50-bed facility. And like I said, this was actually presented as an option in our original presentation. What does that mean to the county? What I did is I took those rate changes. This is where the average census falls. At the time we did in September, there were 40 Medicaid patients at St. Croix Healthcare Center. Those 40 patients with the increased rates would generate $221,000 of additional revenue. Okay? That's what having 50 beds would mean for the healthcare center. Obviously, if you were going to do that, if you don't reduce the operating costs also in conjunction, you're really not, this doesn't include any reduction of operating expenses. This is purely a revenue number. Yes?
Could you explain to the board the row at the top, the abbreviations?
Yes, this first one here is intensive skilled nursing. That's the highest acuity. What these are is acute. This tells how sick the person is. And this level of care is determined by the state. So this is intensive skilled nursing, and intermediate care facility. Okay? This is the lowest level of care. This is probably where 80% of the residents in the state fall, is this SNF, and this is the highest level of care. Okay? And then based on that, you just get a different payment. This payment is only the rate increase impact. That's how much your rate would go up. The next thing that we talked about, and obviously as part of the RFP, would be what if the county were to sell the nursing home? What are the things out there that would impact the sale of the nursing home? As you know, a couple counties have tried, and one county is still in the process of trying to sell their nursing home. The first thing that comes into play, if I was sitting on the other side of the table and you said you wanted to sell your nursing home to me, the first thing I would look at is say, okay, if I bought your nursing home, what would Medicaid reimburse me for this nursing home? Because remember, a large portion of my residents, if I was the owner, are going to be Medicaid. So I would sit back and say, you know, based on the appraised value of the facility, what would Medicaid reimburse me for this facility? The next thing I would look at is say, well, where is the facility located? If the facility is somewhere up in the Northwoods, obviously the value of the facility probably isn't as high as if it's in a metropolitan area or a larger area. From a care providing standpoint, the three areas that the new residents are really looking for are, how many private rooms does the facility have? What is your dining space? Okay, there's a real focus on dining services, and bathing facilities. So again, for me coming in from the outside, I'd say, well, am I going to have to spend a lot of money to get these up to where I want them to be? Am I going to have to do an addition to get more private rooms? Or are there enough private rooms right now? From a financial standpoint, profitability, obviously the union contract would be an issue with the sale. Most of the providers probably would want to negotiate with the union and try to negotiate something different with them. The wage scale and the benefit package. And then the last one that really impacts it is nursing home utilization trends and the fact that the state wants to reduce nursing home utilization. Okay, so it's kind of like going into a business that, you know, the state's really not looking to support. Why does this become important? Because this kind of tells you how many state dollars are they going to put in to support the nursing home business? Okay, and that's where this becomes important. If they're not going to put, for example, this year, for the July 106 state budget, there's about a 2.8% increase in the funding for the nursing home. If you think about inflation, inflation is typically higher than 2.8. So what's that tell you is the trend is the expenses are increasing faster than the revenue is going to increase, at least for the Medicaid portion. So again, if I'm looking to buy the nursing home, these are the factors I'm going to take into account. I did a little what-if scenario just to kind of, again, give you some kind of meat to the calculation. What I did is I said, okay, if I was just going to look at what Medicaid would reimburse me, that was going to be my basis to determine the purchase price of the nursing home, and I would go to and I'll show you the rate worksheet in a minute, but if a purchaser could borrow at 6% interest and depreciate the property over 30 years, which is the Medicaid guideline for a existing facility, they could offer about $3.5 million for the property, assuming no major improvements are required. And I'll show you the calculation in a minute. Actually, we'll go over there. And this is actually what the state does is every 3 years they do an appraisal of the nursing home. They hire an outside firm that comes in and says, what is the undepreciated replacement cost? In essence, if you were going to replace this facility, what would it cost to replace it? And that's where this $8.8 million comes in. What they do next is then they say, okay, how many beds are in the nursing home? The nursing home now has 72 beds, and they determine a value per bed. So if you divide the $8.8 million by 72, you come up with this $122,000 a bed. The maximum that they are going to reimburse you for is $75,900 a bed. That number is set by the state. That's set each year as part of the budget process. So the allowable percentage becomes the $75,900 divided into the $122,532. So 61% of your replacement value is allowable under the state's program, or 62%. Then they say, okay, now tell us about the real facility. What is, if you take into account how old the building is, all that stuff, what's the depreciated value of the facility? And the depreciated value is about $7.5 million. And they use that, they multiply the 7.5 times the 62%, and they come up with what's called equalized value. Okay? Equalized value comes into play to determine how much are they going to pay you for interest and depreciation and property insurance on your facility. And what they allow is they allow 7.5% of that equalized value for allowable property expenses. So if my depreciation, interest, and property insurance is under $349,000 or at $349,000, the state's going to allow all of that as an allowable cost and reimburse me for it. If this number is $500, they're going to knock me back to the $349. Okay, so the question then is saying, all right, to get to $349, what can I afford to pay for the building? That's in essence the question. And what I did is I assumed property insurance of about $22,000 a year, and I just backed into these numbers of a purchase price. If you take $3.5 million and you divide it over 30 years, you come up with the $117,000 in depreciation. And if you take 6% interest, and this is just flat, this wasn't an amortization schedule, it's about $210,000 a year. That comes up to about $349,000, which is pretty close to the max. So if somebody was just looking at what Medicaid would reimburse, this is about the purchase price they could afford to offer and still get it all reimbursed through the Medicaid program. Yes?
So it's clear in my mind, Medicare is going to reimburse them?
Medicaid.
Is going to reimburse them for the purchase of a nursing home?
They reimburse the property insurance, the depreciation, and interest through the daily payments that they pay you, yes.
Above what they normally would pay for a citizen being?
The Medicaid rate is actually broken into an operating component and a property component. And that property component is made up of this, yeah. So the cost to provide nursing care and provide meals is one component of the rate. There's another property component. As this number here goes up and down. So let's say there was no debt on the facility, and so this whole $210,000 would go away. Then they would take the 300, or what would the difference be there? 130, and they take the 130,000 and say that's your allowable expense.
Okay, with that, then, am I correct to assume that the county, because it doesn't have debt on the nursing home, we're not borrowing, there's no debt, we're not getting that money?
Right. Yeah, and we had talked about that actually at the healthcare committee level, that when the renovation was done, and I know counties love to pay cash for stuff, but it should have been financed, because you would have gotten this interest. Now, you don't want to go above the 349, but you want to go up to that level. Any other questions so that's kind of the sales side. Oh, I got to go back here now. Now, what impacts that other than just the Medicaid calculation, which is up here? What if I said, remember I talked about private rooms, and I talked about bathing facilities, and I talked about dining facilities, and I said, well, I think it's going to cost me $1 million in order to upgrade the facility to where I want it, okay? Then me as the buyer, I would say, out of that $3.5 million, I'm going to reduce the purchase price dollar for whatever capital improvements I think I need. Because that capital improvements also fit into that allowable property. So if I'm going to go out and finance the capital improvements, I'm going to want to get reimbursed for that debt also, in addition to what I borrow to buy the facility. So any capital improvements that would be identified pretty much reduce the purchase price dollar for dollar. And that's all going to be based on the perspective of the prospective buyer. You know, some of them may say the facility's great, we can run it as is. Some of them may say, we want to build a new facility, we don't want to use this facility. That's the next one here. The analysis also assumes that the new owner would be content to stay in the current building. Now remember, how many years am I depreciating this building over? 30. So that means I'm going to be content to stay there for at least 15 or 20 years, okay? If I'm not, the purchase price that I would pay, let's say I bought the facility and a year from now, I opened a brand new facility. Any money that I incurred for the old facility, even though buying the beds was part of that, is not transferable to the new facility. Okay? So if I spent $3 million and then I opened a new building and I spent another $3 million on the new building, I wouldn't get credit for the old $3 million. And that's a real big point in this RFP process of what does somebody want, or what are they willing to work with. And you won't know until you ask the question. Okay, an offer of $3.5 million is very unlikely, but not completely out of the question, depending on the parties interested in the property. What else do they have? Why do they want to be here? That's part of the key process too. So, and again, none of these questions will be answered until somebody comes up and says, you know, this is what we want to offer. We did that. Next option is lease. One of the questions that I get from a lot of counties is, well, what if we sell the property to somebody and they're not a very good operator? What if we're unhappy with the level of care that they provide or the quality of care we provide? And that's really where the lease is probably a good scenario, because it lets you get to know the party that you're dealing with. You got a period of time where you can find out what their staffing levels are. You can kind of find out how they run the facility. So it's a good transition. Part of it would be, and you know, you would have to determine who would be responsible for what. The county would own the building, okay, under this scenario, and you would sell the nursing home license to another organization. That's how it would work, okay? That organization would have to then get licensed in the state of Wisconsin, so they'd have to go through the state licensing process and become a licensed nursing home operator. And the two key parts in that part of it is, who's responsible for this facility maintenance? Okay, you own the building, who keeps the maintenance up? That would be part of the cost. And who's responsible for the capital improvements? Okay. Last piece on your county would probably want right of first refusal to buy back nursing home license should the buyer decide to sell. Gives you that safety valve to say, well, man, we leased it to a great facility, or we leased it to somebody really a good provider, and they turned around and sold it to somebody else that maybe wasn't as good a provider. this clause would allow you to kind of have that control. That if they wanted to sell and you wanted to have some say in who bought it, you could buy it back and then you could resell it. Okay? On the lease side, just like on the buying side, there's actually a maximum amount that the facility could could pay for a lease and still get it reimbursed. My guess is, just kind of knowing the state of the industry, this lease maximum probably will not come into play. You probably won't have to worry about what the maximum lease amount is, but it is something that, and again, it doesn't impact you, it impacts the person doing the leasing, but it is something they will look at. Here's the key right here, and this is a big one that in the other projects I've worked with, and keep this in mind because it's, sometimes the excitement of kind of getting out of underneath the tax levy outweighs sometimes our thinking. The lease maximum for future periods is the lower of the current period lease maximum inflated or the actual lease payments. In essence, if somebody come in and said, I'll lease the facility from you for $1 and I'll operate it. What you've just done by accepting that is you've limited any other lease payments in future years to $1 being reimbursed. You can still get more than that because what you've told the state by doing this is the value of our facility lease-wise is $1. That's what you've told the state. And so that becomes the maximum that they're going to reimburse you for. This dollar then would be inflated by about 1.5% a year as you work your way back up. So this isn't a good, even though it may be an option that somebody comes to you with through the RFP process, it's not a good process for you guys to go down because you've really limited yourself reimbursement-wise in future years.
Larry, let me understand that inflation, is that 5% per year approximately?
1.5
1.5%
per year. Yep. Again, under the lease isn't the ultimate answer, I don't think. The problem is, and really the question is lease and then what? Otherwise, county may be required to operate nursing home after the lease period. Typically, most leases have an out clause that says, we need to give you 60 days notice and we can give whatever we're leasing back to you. Well, that means within, if I'm operating your facility and decide, you know what, I'm losing my shirt running this nursing home, here you go, county, you can have it back, okay? So it's a good short-term plan, as it says here, good option to get to know a leasing organization, opportunity to buy time until other plans can be developed, not a good long-range strategy, okay? It's not gonna, and you may lease it to somebody for 30 years and have no problems, but that potential is always gonna be hanging out there. That potential that they could turn around and say, here you go, is always out there. Any questions on lease? One of the questions that came up is if we decided to sell or lease, most likely the seller or the purchaser or the leaser would not want to take on the liabilities already incurred by the county and owed by the county. So any employees that were laid off, the county would be responsible for the COBRA part of their insurance payment. Obviously, the pensions that they've earned and accrued. Unemployment for laid off employees. Accrued paid time off as of 12/31 was about $215,000. What happens, again, if we lease it, are we responsible for maintaining the facility? If we build a different facility or new facility, what are we going to do with the current facility? One of the questions that came up was, what about our IMD residents? There are no IMD residents currently in the healthcare center, so this really isn't an issue right now. If you're placing them, you're placing them out in another facility right now.
What do those initials stand for? IMD.
Oh, this? Yes.
What did somebody say?
Institute for Mental Disease.
Somebody else have their hand up?
Doesn't
Yes.
that mean that if we didn't have the nursing home, the county still would be responsible for supplementing any nursing home that took them?
You already are, but you're not doing it through the healthcare center
Yeah,
right now
doing it
anyway.
to ourselves.
Right.
So if they weren't there, we'd have to supplement wherever they went.
And they're already out, right now they're going somewhere else anyway.
Oh, okay.
That's my point.
Okay.
You're already supplementing them somewhere else.
Do you know we have some we are doing that with?
Fred?
The answer to that is yes. We contract with Trempealeau County, and that's where they're an institute for mental disease, and it's in our mental health budget.
Yes.
Fred, I believe we had 816 residents at the nursing home last year. Did the county pay for any of their care?
That was discussed previously, that the pay sources for the residents up at the nursing home are private pay, Medicaid, Medicare, or other insurance. So the county did not incur a direct bill as a result of those individuals, but obviously by way of county levy has certainly subsidized.
Yes.
I know Sylvester Stallone was Cobra, but what does this mean up here?
That's the insurance payments for somebody to transition off of your health insurance before they find their own replacement. So it relates to the health insurance. Any other questions? Way in the back.
You have the unemployment laid off for all employees and the accrued pay time off of $215,000. Did anybody calculate what the insurance would be for the laid off employees and the unemployment for laid off employees if they all were laid off?
No, because I think that's part of the RFP process when you get to evaluating, because you may get somebody that comes in and says, if you'll give us the accounts receivable, we'll take the health insurance. So that's all part of that negotiation process when somebody comes to the table regarding the RFP. Yes.
It's back a few, but don't go back, it's okay. The question is, we're talking about how much Medicare pays and all these other costs that come in.
Mhm.
Is the price of a bed, the price of a resident fixed by the state? We can only charge so much? And if it's not, has anybody considered raising the price?
It is for all payer types except your private pay. And the problem you have with private pay is it's a competitive market. So if you price yourself out of the market, just like buying a car or anything else, then you're not going to get those residents to come here. So, but for Medicare and Medicaid and the HMOs, which is the insurance companies, those are all set by those agencies.
We don't know where we're priced according to the private entities around us.
I would think we.
On private pay, we looked at that, looked at doing something, but right now, we determined that that is not the way to go, because we're so, any increases we make, we will become one of the higher cost centers in the area.
Anything else? Off we go. One of the other, is that the next one? Yep. One of the other questions that came up was, what about some organizations, in order to minimize the impact of the Medicaid program on their nursing home, expand their services to assisted living, independent housing, some other senior services system. And it's a couple of the reasons that I don't, at least in our opinion, this probably isn't the appropriate thing to do is, again, your fringe and your wage scale compared to your competitors is going to be higher, and it's going to make you harder to be competitive. There already is a competitor that offers those services right in the New Richmond area. And the county would have to incur substantial startup investment at a time when they're looking to minimize risk. Again, you'd have to build the facility or construct the facility. So that was kind of why we didn't proceed down that path. All right, and then the last thing, and this was just, again, for the healthcare committee, just to kind of get their thought process thinking. We kind of talked about, give us a scenario, if we didn't sell, if we didn't lease, what's out there? As I told the committee, a lot of times if you're just sitting there waiting for somebody to come and take your problem away, it doesn't help unless you work with that organization. So we walked through the scenario. We talked about identifying an organization to partner with, and that's where the RFP process really comes from. And I mean, you may send out the RFP and you get somebody to say, we'll buy the facility, and the county may say, that's what we want to do, and that, would be, one of their decisions. We talked about an organization would lease the existing facility for two or 3 years, during which time a new facility would be constructed. Obviously, the impact on the healthcare center on the county's budget during this 2 or 3 year period would be significantly less, because somebody else would be operating the facility and running the facility. The organization would lease or purchase a new facility from the county. Okay, so the new organization, again, we talked about lease, but now instead of leasing the current facility, we would be leasing a new facility. The county would reduce tax levy during the lease period. We talked about that. We would limit capital improvements during the lease period. Obviously, we wouldn't want to put a lot of capital improvements into the old facility with the idea that we're moving to a different facility. County construct new nursing home to be operated at the end of the lease. Assume construction costs of $120,000 per bed. Okay. I don't know if there's something below that or not. I think it's got financing at 6% or something like that. 4%. Okay. All right. A little more of the discussion. County would then lease the new facility to the current leasee. The lease maximum, and this is again part of the Medicaid regs, the lease maximum allowed for replacement facility is the lease expense paid subject to all cost centers. So in our scenario where we had that $349,000, that would become the most they could pay for the lease and get it all reimbursed. And this is part of the answer, but I'll show you. And then the county would have unfunded depreciation expense of approximately these two amounts. And I did two different calculations for you. And again, it's the same scenario. Assuming that we built the facility for $120,000 a bed, this would become the appraised value of the facility. We do the same calculation. Our equalized value becomes about $5.46 million. This becomes our maximum lease payment. This is 7.5% of our equalized value, so $410,000. Assuming that the county could borrow at 4% and depreciated the new building over 40 years, this would be the county's cost. And this is where I came up with the $151,000 of unreimbursed, $152,000 of unreimbursed. Again, significantly less than what the county's incurring today on the facility. The part of the reason to go down this analysis is for the people coming into the nursing home, their expectations of services is probably going to be a step up from what our current residents have, and to kind of work towards a nice new facility that would meet those needs. The second scenario is everything is the same, except we only borrowed $7.64 million, and we contributed $1,000 or $1 million in equity. And again, whether you do that or not, I just threw it out there for you to kind of do the thought process. Everything stays the same. Our 409 stays the same. Our interest is now less because we borrowed less money, so we only have a $112,000 deficit. And again, not to say that you might get somebody that comes in and says, I'll lease the facility for $600,000. I mean, this isn't anything set in stone with the person coming to negotiate with you. This is just something that Medicaid determines is the maximum. The Medicaid program will lease it for, will reimburse it. Okay? County could reduce impact on a nursing home on the budget to less than $200,000 per year. County has risk to find new leasee. Okay, if they decide they don't want to lease it, the county would have to find somebody new. Penalty for early cancellation of lease agreement or increased annual lease payment. You'd either have to bump it up to cover that risk, or you'd have some type of clause. Right of first refusal to purchase nursing home license or approval of licensed purchaser. Community would have a nice facility to meet the changing needs of the aging population. And that's it. And again, that doesn't mean that this is the only way to go. It's just to get your thought process out there that it just doesn't have to be sell or lease or nothing. There are some options out there to try to work with somebody to do something different. Questions?
The downsizing option, the KIP slots are still available to counties?
If the resident goes to the county,
Right.
yeah, they have to actually go with them. They used to give them to you for the number of beds you gave up regardless. Now the resident that you give up the bed for actually has to go into the community, and then you get the slot.
And we can go to halftime administrator at 49 or 50 beds still?
50 beds, yep.
Yeah, the last option you showed where we build a new building and lease it out and save a lot of money. How many counties in your universe of nursing home stuff have opted to do that as a way to save money?
None of them have opted to do it yet. There are a lot of them looking at going that route. A lot of them are just, most of the counties right now are in the operational review piece. They're at the point where you guys were, what, a year ago saying, what operationally can we do to change our budget? Okay? In my opinion, regardless of what they choose to, and a lot of them have said, in order to do that, we want to keep our tax levy related to the nursing home flat. Okay? Based on Medicaid reimbursement, based on inflation, that's not going to happen no matter what you do operationally over a long period of time. There is a county that's has already had the RFP process, but they haven't determined what their options are yet. And there is a facility, I think Gordon brought up at our meeting, in St. Peter that did something very similar to this.
But can I get a follow-up on that? Well, you said that, it sounded like you said, no matter what we do, if we are in the nursing home business with the Medicare situation the way it is, our costs are gonna go up and it sounded like you said that option didn't make a lot of sense.
Well, unless you really get to those core options that I listed at the beginning, those are really kind of outside the healthcare center's control, and they're more at the county control. But even that being said, if the Medicaid program doesn't change dramatically, yes. I mean, it's going to be tough to reduce the deficit. Yes?
The reduction from 72 to 50 beds is quite a drop. Have you done any calculation to 60, or is that counterproductive?
There is no
My feeling is that it seems like we haven't had any problem filling, 67 beds on average?
Right. And that's where the initial downsizing occurred, was to say, well, if we're taking care of fewer patients, even if it costs us a little more for each patient, in total it's going to cost us less. The 50 beds becomes important because there's actually an incentive by the state at 50 beds to give you a higher rate. And that doesn't happen anywhere else. It can be at 40, it can be lower than 50, but it can't be higher than 50. So that's kind of where that 50 number comes into play. Yes?
On several of the occasions when I've visited the nursing home, it's been mealtime, and although quite a few of the residents are ambulatory, they're unable to negotiate the ramps that go from their living space to the dining room area. And I'm wondering if it's within the realm of possibility to retrofit the existing facility to incorporate an elevator versus the ramps, or is that not cost effective? Is it better to consider raising the structure and rebuilding a new one? Would we be throwing good money after bad?
Ms. Wentz, would you respond to that, please?
Several years ago, we undertook the expansion and redecoration of our dining rooms. Our people no longer go up the ramps. Our people have a dining room on first floor and a dining room on second floor. The food is taken to the residents on second floor. Residents on first floor are able to go from their rooms directly to the dining areas. These were all redone, redecorated, all brand new, and they include air conditioning and a small kitchen so that people can have their relatives come in and work with them. And I think that has really been an asset to the nursing home.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Lester? Stan?
Yes, when I was looking at on your first couple of slides where you had the net facility revenue per bed, and we were at the 56th percentile.
Yep.
That's $157.40 a day. And then our net expense, facility expense per day, we were at the 91% percentile.
Yep.
And that was $222 a day. When you take that difference between those two numbers, which is about $65.40, and you take that over 72 beds times 365 days, you got $1,719,000.
Remember, there's no IGT revenue in this number, though.
But we also know that there's no guarantee of how much more IGT we're going to get. either.
Yeah, I mean, your calculation is correct, just remember there's no IGT in there. Gordon?
Well, I introduced the resolution that's before you, and the reason I did is I followed up on a newspaper article that I saw where the city of St. Peter was building a brand-new nursing home and leasing it out, and it was being 100% paid for, and they had what they wanted. And so I looked into that, and I think what it illustrates, and I've made a presentation to the HHS board, is that we have a revenue problem as much as we have an expense problem, and you just looked at it. If we simply solved the revenue side, we would have no levy. I mean, if we had the same numbers as St. Peter does on the revenue side, we would have no tax levy supporting this nursing home. Now, we can't do that because we don't have a facility that meets today's needs, in my opinion. And I think this will come out in the RFP. I think we'll have clear alternatives identified for the board. But fundamentally, we don't have a feeder facility. We can't get the higher rates on the revenue side. We aren't next to a hospital, which is one of the things you have to be, either connected or have a contractual relationship with a hospital so that you have those patients. Those are the patients that support a nursing home on the revenue side. And also on the revenue side, you have to have an assisted living facility as a feeder facility. So these are things that can be examined in the RFP process. A lot of discussion went on about our expenses being higher. Our expenses are higher, but if we simply solve the revenue side, that would solve our tax levy problem. And I know that we have 107 employees at that nursing home, and that's very important to the New Richmond area. It's obviously very important to those people and their families. And I think if we look at how it's been done elsewhere, those folks have a good likelihood of having a job long-term, and that's good for the economic development in St. Croix County. But if we just stand still and not fix this problem, both from a revenue side and an expense side, I think their jobs would be in danger long-term. So as we move forward on this RFP process, I hope that we can bring you a solution or several alternative solutions back that would fix the revenue side as well as fix some of the expense side. Thank you.
Do any of you have more questions for Mr. Lester? Otherwise, I'm anxious to hear from those members of the public that have talked with you and you've made arrangements for. Mr. Raymond?
Well, I was looking at the resolution. The resolution doesn't look at any of the sales options, as I understand it. And I think his presentation, I come away from his presentation saying, really the only viable long-term option to solve this problem is the sales option.
Well, I honestly think that's, I was there both when the initial motion was made and when it was unanimously changed at the last meeting. I think they meant, when they say purchase or lease options, they meant sale. Purchase is the other side of sale. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chair Wentz, but isn't that the way you understood it? Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it is.
Does that help?
All right.
Yeah, that's in the second whereas, that where the word purchase is, that's the other side of sale.
Should we strike out the lease option?
No, the lease is still there too. Purchases, leases, and partnerships. They amended it at the last meeting to add the partnership concept there. So, do you have other questions from Mr. Lester? Otherwise, please don't leave. But did any of you want to have some of your constituents speak?
I think Mr. Hager has one of his, and Mr. Ritz has one that would like to speak also.
I'll handle the microphone for you, and you run the timer, and you'll have both hands for managing this. Responsible for keeping this.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name's Marie. I have been an employee at the health center for 28 years. And excuse me, I'm kind of flying at the seat of my pants because up until this morning, we were told we weren't going to be able to speak. I understand your budget is very tight, but sometimes you need to put the people before the money. A private nursing home are good, most of them, but you also have where a private nursing home can say